Order.
Good evening. In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 1046 et sec, adequate notice this meeting has been provided by advertising in the Star Ledger, El Nuevo Coquí, Haiti Progress, and Luz Americano newspapers, and by distribution to the administrative offices of the Newark Public Schools. A copy of the meeting notice was also forwarded to City Hall for posting. This is a board business meeting for Tuesday, October 10, 2017.
Roll call.
Mr. Bledsoe.
Present.
Ms. Carter.
Present.
Ms. Fonseca. Ms. Gaddy.
Present.
Ms. Garcia.
Present.
Ms. Johnson.
Present.
Ms. Owens.
Present.
Vice Chair Padilla.
Present.
Chair Lewis.
Present.
Quorum is present, Mr. Chair.
Now we'll have our committee reports. We'll first start off with operations by our Vice Chair, Mr. Padilla.
Should we do personnel? We're gonna do personnel first? Personnel.
The screen. I would just make the suggestion that we start with personnel, considering that we need to go into executive session, and there's, still more community members we know are going to come, so that way maybe more people can hear the rest of the reports.
Is a board decision. So
I second that.
Move it.
All right, so this is,
vote on.
all right, so this is a motion by Ms. Owens, second by Ms. Carter to go into executive session for the Personnel Committee report. It's dealing with negotiations, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hold on, Larissa.
Motion by Owens, second
Sorry,
by...
Arson, can I clarify? The motion is for executive session because there first has to be a report out of the.
No, for me to read the question.
Right, I just wanted to clarify because I
okay.
thought you said motion for
Okay, I thought we
executive
were going to
session.
executive session first.
No, to read the report.
Okay, that's fine. We don't need a motion for that.
Correct. Just wanted to
Okay, we don't need a motion. Just go into personnel first. So just personnel.
Personnel report.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Personnel met on October the 4th. Meeting was called to order at 5:02. Those board members in attendance were myself, Kim Gaddy, Josephine Garcia. District staff were Larissa, Herb, Janelle, Andrea, Sarah, Nafisa, and Ziamara. Personnel transition update. As the board successfully completed the training on compensation and benefits, the next step in this transition is to schedule and participate in a training on the remaining topic areas. Training dates were offered in November and December by the board chair. Board Member Carter is requesting that the training be conducted as soon as possible. The district is reaching out to the trainers from New Jersey School Boards Association to determine what dates will work. We then spoke about instructional vacancies. The district shared the current instructional vacancies at schools, showing the district is currently 98.2% staffed with 59 instructional vacancies in total, and 43 of these vacancies being direct instructional vacancies. The board has requested that the vacancies be reported by ward. Those new items, the hiring process for principals, vice principals, and CIOs. The district provided the committee with a detailed overview of our selection process and criteria for principals, vice principals, and school chief innovation officers. This is the first month that the board will now have voting authority on the hiring of school administrators. Resolutions, the promotion, reclassification, and new hires. The board reviews 6 candidates for hires, promotion, or reclassifications. In general, the board asks that the district provide the name of the hiring manager for each candidate, as well as the home address of the candidate. District staff and board members discuss whether it is necessary to include the address in the hiring packet information. A decision was not reached in the meeting, but after further review, the district will not redact this information from the resumes. The NJSBA has noted, however, that a home address cannot be used as a factor in the decision process or will expose the board to liability. Furthermore, there's a state statute that dictates boards cannot require candidates to live in their city. For the specific candidate review, all 8 candidates were recommended for approval for hire. We then had an update on negotiations. Oh, wait, sorry, back up. As there are a few candidates that may be selected by hiring managers before next week's business board, we then had a special personnel meeting today, which was called to order at 4:50. and was adjourned at 5:20. We then spoke about negotiations. And lastly, the teacher attendance review. The district conducted an analysis of teacher attendance and will be sharing with principals. The board elected to discuss that at the next personnel policy committee. There were no other new business raised, and the meeting was adjourned at 6:56. Are there any questions?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. I didn't say good evening earlier. I just was wondering why we weren't able to get a copy of the personnel minutes, or if it's just me, it wasn't in my packet. I know that in the email earlier today, it was mentioned that some board members are in conflict, and maybe that's the reason why, but then at the same time, the minutes were just read, so I don't understand how that's different from having it printed out in front of us. So maybe not now in this moment, we could get clarification on how that's supposed to work with minutes when we have board members in conflict.
So thank you for pointing that out. Ms. Gaddy had just also asked that same question. To clarify, there is a detailed summary that's not read in the public session around the negotiation updates that certain board members are conflicted from. This is also, frankly, some of it learning how to do this process when there are conflicts, because there are members who should have received a redacted version and some that should not have, but that's something that we frankly have to do. So apologies for board members not receiving in time. There was a question as to who can and can't receive the detailed notes. So we can give the copies to those who are not conflicted now, and to the others, we'll just have to redact that section.
In the minutes I read, there's a lot more in there that I just didn't read because it's a public setting.
Yeah, I imagine that, and I wanted to read it. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for me?
So we're going to do a motion to accept this report now? Okay. Ms. Gaddy, is there a second?
Second.
So there's a motion to accept the October 4th Personnel Committee report as delivered by Board Member Carter, moved by Ms. Gaddy, second by Mr. Bledsoe. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? Motion carries. The report's accepted.
Is there a motion to go into executive session?
Motion to go into executive
yeah.
session.
Okay. For purpose of discussing negotiations.
For the purpose
correct?
of discussing negotiation, new hires, and reclassification and promotions.
Motion.
Bledsoe, is there a second? Move it. Gaddy, motion to go into executive session to talk about the items as articulated by the board member, moved by Bledsoe, second by Gaddy. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? We're going to go into executive session.
And right now, we're looking at 30 minutes just so the public could be informed of.
Is that right? At 30 minutes?
Might be longer.
Okay. Okay.
Nancy.
Can I get a motion to come out of executive session?
Motion.
Okay,
Second.
Garcia, second by Bledsoe. You guys ready? This motion to return, reconvene from executive session into public session, moved by Garcia, second by Bledsoe. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? Motion carries. We're back in open session. Back to reports, Mr. Chair.
Did they take them back?
Yes.
Espérate, chequea Julio folder. Oh, here it is, mommy. Yep.
I'm gonna give it back.
No problem.
Next report, we'll have program and instruction.
All right, good evening again. Thank you. So this is the board committee report for program and instruction. Chair Leah Owens, Vice Chair Reginald Bledsoe. We met on Tuesday, October 3rd, 2017, from 5:32 p.m. to 9:07. Board members attending: Leah Owens, Reginald Bledsoe, and Dashe Carter. Board members absent: Marquisa Kill Lewis. Administrators attending: Brad Haggerty, Dr. Sunrise Smith, Dr. Kelly Williams, Kathy Duke Jackson, Robert Gregory, Maritza Castillo, and Monique Feynman. Agenda items discussed. The main topics: student supports topic, attendance data 16-17, plans for improvement 17-18. Assistant Superintendent Report, Kathy Duke Jackson, overview of network schools, grading policy, review of current grading policy, and formation of working group, high school academic performance, profile of class of 2017 graduates. There were 6 resolutions in front of the committee, 2 for finance and operations, an internal audit unit report on community-based preschool provider Sarah Ward Nursery Corporation, and a resolution to accept Newark Vision Care Initiative. There are 4 resolutions under purchasing, therapeutic counseling services, professional development for teachers, instructional robotic materials, and career skills program. Smaller topics included field trips, South Ward Community Schools Initiative monthly report, enrollment and class size update for Behringer Arts, Behringer STEAM, Central, East Side, plus similar data for Shabazz Weequahic West Side Campus, curriculum review snapshot, a status of different subject areas, most recent approval adoption, name of point person for each, and a timeline of readiness for pre-K at Carver in 1819. Important points of information. Student supports topic attendance. The presentation to the committee included overall attendance outcomes, attendance by grade, month in school, 3-year comparisons, conclusions, and plans for the 17-18 school year. Chronic absenteeism is defined by the state as absent for 10% or more of total school days. For the 16-17 school year, 43% of students had good attendance, so they are absent less than or equal to 9 days. 26% were frequently absent, absent 10 to 18 days. 20% were chronically absent, absent 19 to 36 days. And 11% were severely chronically absent, absent greater than or equal to 37 days. Pre-K was not included in the first set of trend data due to the fluctuation in numbers in 14-15. Also, NPS educates only 5% of the pre-K population in Newark. Schools and Office of Early Childhood are holding workshops that will facilitate better attendance. The district is hiring for a new position, Special Assistant for Student Attendance, which will have the responsibility of managing the plan for improvement. The plan includes continued focus on clear systems procedures, additional supports to a small number of pilot schools, and home visits. It was mentioned that Advocates for Children of New Jersey recently published a report on chronic absenteeism in Newark Public Schools high schools. Assistant Superintendent Report, Kathy Duke-Jackson, Overview of Network Schools. Assistant Superintendent Duke-Jackson provided an overview of each of the 13 schools in her network. The 4 early childhood sites are considered one school. After reviewing 3 years of park data, principals made strategic decisions about where to schedule staff and what supports were needed for staff and students. Park highlights include 12 out of 13 schools in the network demonstrated growth in proficiency levels. Ann Street, Lafayette Street, Oliver Street, and Wilson Avenue demonstrated overall growth. 10 schools demonstrated high growth in various grade levels: Ann Street, Harriet Tubman, Hawkins Street, Lafayette Street, Lincoln, Oliver Street, Ivy Hill, South Street, Speedway, and Wilson Avenue. The committee was provided park achievement based on school and grade level. Details on the plan for improvement at Chancellor Avenue was provided. This included a lot about how to leverage successful teachers. A new insulated roof is being installed at Lafayette Street. As a result, students on the 4th floor have been temporarily moved to the St. James Annex across the street, and 1 new kindergarten class was temporarily moved to Quitman Street. That teacher is being supported by both the Lafayette and Quitman administrations. The feedback from parents has been positive. All students are expected to return to the main building after the Thanksgiving break. Large numbers in the East Ward are being addressed by providing support from an ESL teacher in general education classrooms, by conducting small group instruction, and by looking into other sites for students to attend school. As noted previously, workshops are being provided to improve pre-K attendance. Voluntary participation and medical concerns are the greatest factors in poor attendance. Grading policy. In following up on the resolution passed last month, the committee sketched out a plan for revising the district's grading policy and achieving board adoption in June. There was initial discussion about adding habits to report cards, which would reflect a holistic approach to assessing students. Committee members will read the most recent and past grading policies in preparation for discussion at next month's committee meeting. A working group will be formed with the goal of meeting for the first time in early December. The committee also desires opportunities for input from the community during this revision process. High school academic performance. First, the high school graduation assessment requirements and how they will change over the next few years were provided. In 6 years, the NPS 4-year graduation rate grew by 17 percentage points, from 61% in 2011 to 78% in 2017. Then a profile of the class of 2017 graduates was presented. This included the pathways to graduation, meaning which combination of assessments students passed in order to graduate. 20% of students passed at least one park exam, 41% of students passed 2 alternative assessments, 25% of students required a portfolio in at least one subject, 10% of students were exempt, and 4% of students fell into another category. Of the 1,862 graduates, 22% graduated by passing the ACT ELA and ACT math tests. This was the pathway with the largest percentage of students, followed by the pathway of passing portfolio ELA and portfolio math, which was done by 16% of the graduates. Only 3% of 2017 graduates passed both the Park ELA and Park math tests, that is 55 or 56 students. The committee chair requested to include this information in this month's superintendent's report. South Ward Community Schools Initiative Monthly Report. The activities and attendance for the back-to-school nights for the 5 schools was reported. An update for each of the 6 core elements was included. The update for core element number 2, high-capacity partnerships and resources, read, the university-assisted partnership with Rutgers Newark continues to yield vital programs and collaborations. Just a sample, critical writing seminars for seniors, Shabazz Future Scholars Program for rising 9th graders, 7-week immersive STEM research experience for students, launch of mobile communication tool for parent engagement, creation of a community school corridor to house Community Partnership and Learning Center, RU-UAP office, Health and Wellness Room, and Parent Resource Center. The elementary schools created a calendar of events for Saturday clubs and for the family rooms. Enrollment and class size for Behringer Arts, Behringer STEAM, Central East Side, plus similar data for Shabazz Week Wake West Side Campus. Projected enrollment and current total enrollment by grade level were provided to the committee in addition to enrolled students absent more than 10 days since the beginning of the school year. Both Behringers are over-enrolled, and both Behringers have high numbers of students who can already be categorized as frequently absent. Central High School is under-enrolled by 123 students, and West Side is under-enrolled by 141 students. East Side's freshman class has 20 extra students enrolled, and just a quick addendum, we actually got that clarified, it's not extra students. Information regarding class size at Central, Behringer STEAM, Behringer Arts, Eastside, Shabazz, and Weequahic was included. However, the information in one of the files was wrong, so the committee was not able to review class sizes at these schools. Timeline of readiness for pre-K at Carver in 1819. A planning meeting was scheduled to discuss the assessment of need in the South Ward, determination of size of program, i.e. number of sections, and assessment of space. The committee will be updated on the outcome of this meeting soon, as the deadline for submitting pre-K enrollment projections to the state is November 15th, and the next P&I meeting is scheduled for November 14th. There's no conclusions reached, ongoing issues still under consideration, information requests from this meeting still to be filled, class sizes at Central, Behringer STEAM, Behringer Arts, Eastside, Shabazz, and Weequahic, and recommendations. It is the committee's recommendation that the Newark Board of Education vote yes to all resolutions presented to the Program Instruction Committee that are up for vote this month. And then just another quick note for the board members in the community. There was a lot of information and data presented to us during the committee. So if there was something in particular you wanted more information about, of course, there's time during public participation. You can ask. If we have the answer, we'll provide it at this time. And the same thing with the board members. We had a lot of information. So if you want any of the details, it's very easy for us to be able to share it through Google Drive. Thank you.
Any
Mr.
questions
President.
from Ms. Owen?
Mr.
Mr.
President.
Bledsoe?
Thank you. I just would like to know, we talked briefly in the committee about the classroom sizes for the respective high schools. I would like an update and clarity on the class sizes for Technology High School. So thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, I do. Board Member Owens, I would like to know the class sizes for Technology High School 11th grade and 12th graders. Thank you.
Any other board members? Can I get a motion to accept the report?
Motion.
Bledsoe.
Second.
Garcia. Motion to accept the October 3rd P&I Committee report delivered by Board Member Owens, moved by Mr. Bledsoe, second by Ms. Garcia. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstained? Motion carries. Report accepted.
Next report, we'll have our finance report given by Finance Chair Crystal Fonseca.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Ms. Fonseca.
Hey, hey. Our meeting was held on Thursday, October 5th. The meeting was called to order at 6:27 p.m. Attending were from the board members were Tave Padilla, Reginald Bledsoe, and Dashay Carter, and on the districts and of course Ms. Val, who spearheads our meeting, along with Pablo Canella from accounting, Sherelle Spriggs from purchasing, Elvis Matos from budget, and Ms. Nancy Deering from board relations. We discussed we approved our minutes from the last meeting held on September 18th. And we discussed all items to be voted on next week, which are under finance and operations and also purchasing and warehouse. And there were only a few items that were actually discussed at our meeting. One of them was the therapeutic counseling services. We were just trying to figure out what exactly does that entail, and Ms. Val explained to us that this resolution is for therapeutic services for special education students. These services are in addition to what we're already doing for the special ed students. And then the other item that was discussed was the renewal of contract for snow removal services. We questioned how did we come up with renewing this service, and we just wanted to verify how the schools are inspected when their snow removal services take place, just to ensure that it's not that we're just sending vendors out to clean out the parking lots and whatnot, but just verifying to make sure that it's done. We know we have issues sometimes at our schools, and Ms. Val explained to us that they have supervisors that take care of those locations and inspect it before schools are ready to be open, so they have to be cleared. And not only in addition to our supervisors, but also we have constant communication with the vendor that provides those snow removal services. It's also explained, and you guys can see it if you pull up the resolution, but it's an as-needed. We use the contract on an as-needed basis, so it depends on what kind of season we have. So hopefully this year we don't get too much snow because it's a very expensive service. Last year, we spent about $184,000 for all of our schools, but it depends on the type of winter we have. The last item we discussed that was questioned was the renewal of contract for paving services set aside for minority and women-owned business. Ms. Sherelle Spriggs explained to us that this comes from a disparity report that is done every 2 years, and it's used for small business owners and minority business owners who don't get an equal pay in certain commodities to give them a chance to bid. So we see this sometimes on other contracts that come up, and so she was just explaining to us what the process is, and that's why we got to that. Other topics that were discussed, because we actually had a short meeting for the first time, was about the Dayton Street relocation. Ms. Val is going to be more than glad to explain that. And we had also brought up again about the Newark Housing Authority building sales. We have not yet received a list of the buildings, who they were sold to, and what the prices are. As soon as Ms. Val gets that information, we'll make sure that all board members receive that. One of the other items we discussed was the strategic plan update. I know some board members are bringing it up and explaining it at the board meetings. We're trying to figure out what's the best way to relay that information to everyone from the finance committee, because it was like a 2-page report and it's hard to go item by item. So Ms. Val and I kind of are trying to brainstorm on how we can distribute that information to you all along with our minutes, so you guys can see where we are on a monthly basis with that. Lastly, we discussed the soccer foundation. Ms. Val, do you want me to kind of touch on that, or you want to explain it? Okay. So the U.S. Soccer Foundation, the district is working with the Red Bulls team, stadium, corporate people. We're partnering up with them. The contract is currently still under review. I'm not sure if that changed, but Ms. Val will check me if she has to. And basically what they're gonna do is they will put a soccer pitch on the asphalt at Rafael Hernandez School to promote youth soccer. And it's gonna be at no cost to the district, which will be great to provide like the space for the kids to have extracurricular activities, obviously at the school, with Rafael Hernandez being one of the schools that we're actually working on at this time. That's about, one very, very important item. I know we keep talking about the audit, conducting a forensic audit. So because the finances are a major issue when we are discussing the forensic audit, and I know it's something that's discussed in the governance committee, which I'm sure Mr. Padilla will explain, but from a financial perspective, Ms. Val had explained to us that the last time an audit was conducted, it cost the district about $700,000. And so we need to really get an understanding of what type of audit we want, because a forensic audit entails many things. So what the committee recommended was that the external auditor come in and give a presentation of what the different types of audits look like, so we can do it like in sessions in groups of either 4 or 3 to kind of give us an understanding of what an audit entails, so that we can come up with a decision on what exactly we're looking for collectively, because all of us are just saying we want an audit conducted and we're not like outlining it specifically so that we can move forward with that, because we all understand the urgency of conducting this audit. So we just need to be better educated on what we're requesting so that we can get an idea of what it's gonna cost us and just, moving forward with it, opposed to continuously bringing it up at every meeting. That was the last item that was discussed. All resolutions were recommended to be approved at the next meeting next week. And I'll turn it over to Val, because I know she's gonna explain Dayton Street and also clear anything up for the soccer foundation. The only thing I want to say about Dayton Street, and I've brought it up to Ms. Val, and just anything with any relocations of schools, issues at schools, that falls under Ms. Val's umbrella, anything with facilities. And so I think that it's imperative that the other members of the district that are working, they keep an open line of communication with Ms. Val so that we can be better prepared when we're doing any type of transitions, because personally, I think that on the finance committee, sometimes we're made aware of things as it's happening, opposed to Ms. Val should be well informed in advance, so that when she comes to us, we're not dealing with it as it happening. We're not being reactive, we're being proactive. So I did make that recommendation. Just going forward, like, people need to understand that that falls under her umbrella, and they need to keep that line of communication open at all times so that we can be well informed and explain it to the public.
Okay, thanks. Good afternoon, Board Chair, members of the board, members of the community. Ms. Fonseca spoke about 2 items this afternoon. The first one I'm going to present as being an informational item, and from time to time I will present these to the board. They are typically items which do not require your approval, but are items that you should know about. The first one is the Dayton Street Hub. We have students going to school from the Dayton Street area. As you know, Dayton Street is closed as a school. At one point in time, we had a transportation hub there that sort of assisted the children who are attending Peshine, because they go to school across the park. That hub was closed, and we are now putting in place another hub for the children from that Dayton Street area, and that hub will operate out of the UCC training center, I think, for want of a better term, that's over there. This will not cost the district. They will not be doing any programs with our students. It's just providing a safe shelter in the event of inclement weather, or in the event that someone does not pick up or drop off their child on time. An aide from the district will ride the bus with the children over to Peshine and will accompany them back in the afternoon. So they'll actually have somewhere to be in out of the weather. We are working on that agreement now. The other item is actually going to be a grant from U.S. Soccer with a partnership with the Red Bulls. It'll be, I think, a 5-year grant agreement worth probably about $50,000. And what they are looking to do is to support schools within the district with a mini soccer pitch, which is a smaller soccer field, not made for playing regulation games or anything like that, but to encourage soccer in the community. The schools that were picked are schools like Ridge, like Rafael Hernandez, and they were picked because they have, one, a soccer program in place already, or a soccer club of some type. There is an interest in soccer. So once we finalize the grant agreement, we will bring it before the board for acceptance. There is a desire on the part of the Red Bulls to make an announcement very quickly, probably before our next meeting, which is where we would bring the finalized agreement, and to actually do a symbolic groundbreaking before the weather gets bad. So that will occur at Rafael Hernandez. The board is being informed, and once we finalize the grant agreement, we will present it to the board for acceptance of donation, as is our protocol. Yes, Ms. Gaddy.
So just for clarification, the address of the UCC,
I don't think I have the contract here. I don't have it here, but I will have it. I'll have it to you in the morning. I just don't have the paperwork.
okay, because I was
It's
just,
on, I want to say Ludlow Street.
It's the track center.
because I know it's the track.
The track
I know
center.
I'm in that area, I'm just trying to see where UCC
It's the
is.
track center.
So UCC has a contract now with the North Housing Authority.
They are a provider. They have an after-school program. They have a program in the track center.
Okay, I just like to have that clarification.
Okay.
And then I know the transportation director made a report some months ago to operations. And so what is the total number of students? Because one of the reasons why the bus, was stopped in that area because it was a low attendance of under 20 kids or 15 or something like that. And some parents felt as though they would rather drive them for safety reasons. So what is it?
There were two goals for Dayton Street, right? One was when we started doing transportation, when universal enrollment first began, we were running transportation hubs. So on that ride, we had low ridership because children there weren't many children left in the Dayton area. As you know, housing is being demolished around that school and is not being rebuilt just at this moment. It will be in the future. So there was low ridership there. We had a couple of kids who, some needed to get to a charter, and you will remember at that time we were transporting charter students also. So they sort of came over from Dayton, connected at Miller, and went to a charter, right? There was also, and always has been, once Dayton was closed, a shuttle that ran from Dayton to Peshine. That shuttle is more actively used, and I'll have to find out how many kids are actually riding now. I don't think it's as low as you think, because the last time I checked, there were about 50 families left in the housing over there. So these are the kids that we have always continued to service. We just didn't have a place for them to be out of the weather in the event they were either had to wait a little bit longer for the bus or that when they got off the bus.
All right, so that information should come back to our operations committee. That would be fine. Then my last question, just in terms of the asphalt, is that rubberized asphalt or what are we?
Let me see if there's a specification description.
Is it porous asphalt? That would be the grade, so the water can seep through. We won't have
I
issues
will,
of
I'll have
safety
to
concerns.
get that information for you, because I don't have it here in the grant
All
agreement.
right, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Mr. Bledsoe?
I heard at the Finance Committee meeting about the renewal of the contracts for the snow removal services. The way it's listed here, maybe Ms. Fonseca can clarify what we talked about at that Finance Committee meeting as to the season and why it looked like it's 2 years.
I did, but, so basically,
I just wanted her to clarify, because I missed it, but to clarify the seasons for the snow removal contract. You could do it. Or either way.
The snow removal contract is specifically that. It's for removal of snow, and typically, when we have large amounts of snow, they don't just come out every time it snows. We have the ability in facilities to plow our own lots, but I would say if we had something over the neighborhood of 8 to 10 inches, to get all of our lots cleared in time, to be able to be able to open schools. And we don't want lack of snow removal to be a reason for us not to open.
But specifically, it looks like it's a 2-year period. So can you clarify that the season is only 6 months per season? So
Yeah.
clarify
Not
that.
even, okay, all right. So, Mr. Bledsoe's talking about the fact that the contract is a renewal, and while the contract, you will read the resolution, it will say that it is a 1-year contract. It actually covers 2 seasons.
Right,
Because
17,
the
18.
winter season is a short period of time. Hopefully, if I'm lucky, from December till March. If we get snow before then, we're in serious trouble. But that period of time, and therefore spans 2 calendar years, but it is a 1-year renewal.
So the way that it works is that normally, like in this business, it actually goes from October 1st until April 30th of the following year. That's how snow seasons work. So when you see it on paper, it doesn't seem clear, but that's how it works in that type of business, because you can expect, we've gotten snow in April, so you have to be covered. You have to be prepared for that.
Thank you.
Just to Ms. Gaddy answer, it's 55 Lidlow Street. Any other questions? Can I get a motion to accept the report?
Second. Second to do. Motion to accept the October 5th finance report as delivered by Board Chair Von Second, moved by Ms. Carter, second by Mr. Padilla. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstained? Motion carries. Finance report is approved.
Now we'll have community engagement by Ms. Carter.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Ms. Carter.
Community engagement met on September the 5th. The meeting was called to order at 5:19. Those in attendance were myself, Josephine Garcia, Crystal Fonseca. The committee members, the NPS designee was Ms. Margarita, NPS staff was Paul and Felicia Mann. The meeting opened at 5:19 and welcomed and introductions to all present. Felicia Mann distributed CEC binders containing meeting documents from previous meetings and documents for the current meeting. Members were explained the contents and the order of the binder. Also informed that moving forward, all materials will be pre-punched and added to each binder on the day of the meeting. Then we spoke about the CUBE conference that 4 board members attended, myself, Reginald Bledsoe, Josephine Garcia, and Marquise Lewis. Both myself and Josephine shared our experience and the handouts that were brought back from the Council of Urban Board of Education conference. We explained that the conference was very rewarding and provided insight on new ideas that we learned from our visit at the St. Charles Parish Public School District. Some of the highlights were cooperative education style school system and dual programming. We enjoy seeing several programs such as the culinary arts program. They had a medical program. They had a teaching program. They had several programs that we shared with the district that we thought were a good idea. We then spoke about the process for proclamations and resolutions. A recommended draft document was distributed for review and recommendations. Members are to review and report back any changes or any recommendations. A discussion followed on a time frame for requests for proclamations or resolutions and or certificates. I recommended that all recipients be sponsored by a board member. Board members will review and prepare to finalize the process at our November meeting. We don't want to have a situation where the entire board doesn't know who's being presented with what that particular month. We then spoke about the Parent Advisory Council. Board members agreed to schedule a working session outside of our monthly meeting to review the Parent Advisory Council documents distributed and to make recommendations to the board chair and members relevant to the formation of the Parent Advisory Council. The meeting is to take place in the month of October, so we'll be meeting shortly with Margarita and then come back with some recommendations on the Parent Advisory Council. We then spoke about the communications update. Communications shared that NPS news communications information and weekly school events starting October 2nd through November 2nd. myself, Crystal, and Josephine raised concerns regarding us not being notified of Newark Public School events in a timely manner. We mentioned that we are missing events or hearing about them at a later date. The committee requested that in the event of emergency situation, the district should add a follow-up call to any email communications. Moving forward, we were told that the information will be sent to board relations to be added to their calendars. Weekly central office staff meetings have been scheduled with board relations to share calendars and omit missed events. We then spoke about the budget building. Board members agreed to have this on the agenda for the November 13th in regards to building a budget from community engagement for the utilization of some of the money that the 6.7, right? Okay. We then spoke about the annual Title I conference. Margarita informed committee members that the 31st annual Title I conference will be held at NJIT this year. In partnership with NJIT, the one-day conference will have the following focus: early childhood, bilingual education, secondary education. Due to the additional breakout rooms at NJIT, additional workshops have been added. We then spoke about the PTO update. OFACE has created a Google document to capture PTSA and PTO information from each school. The senior managers are working with all community engagement specialists to have that documented updated. We then spoke about, I expressed my the Eastside incident. I expressed my concerns about not being made aware of the incident that occurred at Eastside. Additionally, board members were not made aware of a press conference that was held at the park across the street from the school. Once again, during emergency situations, a call should be placed to board members by board relations. We said that we found out as board members through social media of what happened at Eastside, and we felt that was unacceptable. We then spoke about the local control transition meeting. Paul shared that the district plans on holding a local control transition meeting throughout the city as we prepare for local control of the district. The meeting will allow the district to share information such as the timeline from the state. The meeting was proposed for the 1st of November from 6 to 8. The locations have not yet been determined as of yet. NPS will use multiple forms of communication and media to share the information in the effort to have great attendance and active participation. So they plan on having all meetings throughout the city and all wards on that day at that time. Next, there was a motion to adjourn the meeting was made by myself at 7:30. At 6:22, I'm sorry. Are there any questions?
Question.
Ms. Gotti?
So, just to go back, to the conference that's coming up. So the areas, is that supposed to be special education and secondary education, or is that just secondary education?
Say that again, please.
Under the item, agenda item number 7 for the annual Title I conference, it says secondary education and secondary education. Is it special education and secondary education, or just delete one of the secondary education?
Delete the secondary education, and I believe it's special education.
That's, okay. Think it, okay. And
Go ahead.
And then the other question, at last month's board meeting, I made a recommendation that we do resolutions for our students who participated in the Newark International Film Festival, and that we prepare resolutions. Shabazz High School, it was Kalina's program, it was Eastside High School. There were so many students who participated. I don't see that reflected in the minutes, or did that kind of drop off, or?
So what we're doing is trying to have the process so that when these things, so what we're trying to do is create an online process, give a timeline so that each board member or the community, we want the community to be able to offer that as well. And so we should be filing up the process because we had so many requests coming in. There were other requests that's on the agenda that we spoke about as well, so that we can create that process so that you can go online, put it in who you want with board members. So if you wanted it, you would be the board member who sponsored it. Then at our committee meeting, we would go through them and select who was being recognized, whether it be a recognition or a proclamation.
And so, prior to that process being finalized, we can't just, make the recommendations and start.
You
that
can. You can
process.
send me an email.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Miss, just Miss Gaddy. I see where you're going with that. I see where you're going with that. I think that need to be a discussion that we discuss at a retreat, because it's a bigger issue with that. Sometimes we get last minute requests for people who retire and stuff like that. And we need to talk about that at a retreat.
So,
Right.
again, I'll repeat, that's why we want to have a process and community engagement, because we can't continue to work off last minute things. So there's going to be someone can't win something today and think that we'll have been able to do our due diligence and have a proclamation done next week. So that's why in community engagement, we decided that there will be a process that it goes through, and at each board meeting, at each committee meeting, we will go through so that we don't have those last minute requests. So we're letting everyone know that we won't be able to recognize someone 2 weeks after an event happens.
So,
I got you.
Okay.
So I understand what the communication, what community engagement is saying, but I also know what happens. I've been on the board for 8 years, and I know where Ms. Gaddy going with it.
So help us understand.
We know, like, in government, you get last minute requests of people who retire, people die, certain things just overrides a process. So I think that we, as a board, need to sit down and discuss that. So I'm just saying, the next board retreat, I'm putting it on the record, next board retreat, this will be a topic that we would discuss as a board.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Blesser was first, then Ms. Owens.
Just quickly, tonight, I know that we can't recommend that the district or schools not host events on the same night as board meetings. Tonight, there was an event held at Brick Avon, and I think that as board members, we would like to attend or be out in the community. So just as an echo effect for central office staff, just kind of remind schools that night of board meetings, we can't be there. It's not that we don't support the event or support the individual school. It's that we have an obligation to be here the night of board meetings. So thank you.
Yeah. So we get, district staff here, I see a few assistant superintendents in the room, so they'll make sure they relate. Thank you. Ms. Owens?
Yes, thank you. Just real quick, back to the process for proclamations, resolutions, where I definitely hear what you're saying, Mr. Chair. There are things, there should absolutely be exceptions, but I definitely just also agree with the process. I do agree to have a conversation at the retreat. I would just offer up that the Community Engagement Committee continue to do the drafting, so that way we come into the retreat with something to already look at. And then also, depending on the timeline, exactly how this, gets approved, I think there's also something that should be included in the board member handbook that the governance committee is working on, since it is something processed, and we want future board members to know how to go about doing this.
Good.
Yes, because what we want to avoid is, again, having individual people present things that the entire board does not know about, like what happened last meeting. It's a board of 9 of us.
Agree.
Are there any more questions for me?
Any other questions? Can I get a motion to accept the report?
Motion.
Second? Can I get a second?
All right, Garcia and Bledsoe, is that right? This motion to accept the community engagement report is delivered by Board Member Carter, moved by Ms. Garcia, second by Mr. Bledsoe. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstained? Motion carries. Community engagement report accepted.
Next, we're gonna do, operations committee.
Good evening, everyone. Members of the community, NPS staff, my fellow board members. Good evening, Mr. Cerf, Ms. Wilson, and all the assistant superintendents in attendance. This is the report for the Operations Committee meeting held October 2nd, 2017 at 5 p.m. Attendees were Tate Padilla, again the chairman, Kim Gaddy, board member, Reggie Bledsoe, board member Marquise Lewis, and chair president, Valerie Wilson, the BA, Quadika Duke Sprules, director of pupil transportation, Mr. Eric Ingold, executive director of security services, Mr. William Polk, director of project control, Mr. Paul Ingold, the interim executive director of facilities management, Lisa Abdul, special assistant to facilities management, Mr. Rawls, facilities management, Vincent Hutchinson, facilities management, Christopher Smith, facilities management, John Smith, who is a visitor from EMEX, and we'll get into that for a little bit, Micheline Johnson. Minutes were taken by Miss Cynthia Pinckney. Meeting was called to order at 5:02 p.m. I changed the agenda up a little bit because Ms. Spruill had to go in and out. So she reported out on a Zonar GPS tracking system, which is going to be rolled out November 1st. This provides a reduction in maintenance costs to District's 27 vehicles due to its remote diagnostic and preventative upkeep reports and fuel-based analysis. This electronic tablet provides a student tracking component in which eligible general education students will be issued a special ID card, allowing them to ride the district courtesy shuttle buses. Additionally, its component affords the Office of the Pupil Transportation personnel with immediately to locate the whereabouts of the students and allows the driver to enter, for a child to enter and leave a vehicle. Now, what this does is, this is a system that's going to be piloted next month, I believe, with the school, Pashon Avenue School. Okay, it's going to save the district in about $25,000 in overtime costs. And basically what this does is each student's going to be issued an ID card. So when they walk onto the bus, you know that they're on that bus. When they leave the bus, you know when they leave the bus. So basically, you know when they got on, you know when they got off. And it's going to be tablet monitored, so that way we can track every student that gets on. That way now there's no mishap that little Johnny got left at school or little Mary got left over here. Now we know where all the kids are, okay? And I believe with this system, Ms. Spruill is going to report out next month that they're going to get an additional grant for the district to implement on a broader scale for all the students. But we'll report that out next month. Okay, the purchase of new vehicles. Two remaining vehicles will arrive out of the three: a 54-passenger vehicle, a 24-passenger vehicle, with one wheelchair lift. This is earmarked for John F. Kennedy. The Newark Public Schools van is completed. Midday transportation runs will be available for special programs as indicated in the documentation. NPS facilitated 78% of the district's field trips. Board member Gaddy requests for the Ops Monthly report showing the breakdown of bus tickets expenses, including all schools that the district provides tickets for charters, traditional, and non-public. Ms. Gaddy, did you get that report? You got it? Board member Lewis requested a list of the bus vendors used in Newark. Mr. Lewis, did you get that report? Yep. Now, the reason I want to highlight that is with regards to just what Ms. Carter stated with her community engagement request. In the Operations Committee, I said it from the beginning of the year, any requests from a board member, I want a 48-hour turnaround. And if they need more time, they are to email each board member stating that, listen, we can't fulfill this request because we need more time. And I request also a 24-hour notice that they be notified that your request has been given to NPS and it's going to be disseminated to the proper department. So NPS staff, central office, has 48 hours to get them their information. Ms. Gaddy, did you get yours on time? Mr. Lewis, you get yours on time? Okay, so this is something that we're implemented that we want to do district-wide. All right, let's talk about the EMX energy savings. Mr. John Smith he spoke about energy saving solutions that will provide the committee with handouts for review of consideration only. this particular company came in, and they want to offer us energy savings on light and energy in the district. It was only for information purposes. Nothing was set that we're going to vote on it, nothing except that we're going to accept it. And it's in the packet of all the board members, so they can look over it. And then we'll have further conversations in our next committee meeting. Okay. Now, the replacement of murals within the district. This was a hot topic. I asked legal to put a draft up. Mr. Alex DeJamis did put one up. This was only a draft, first-time draft. Board Member Gaddy, Board Member Lewis, Board Member Bledsoe, we each kind of reviewed it. We had our ins and takes about it. You know, we were not 100% set with what was in there. It's not set in stone. So I believe, Mr. Engel, by next month's business meeting, we should have a solid draft to report out to the community. No, I'm sorry, Mr. Paul, I'm sorry. All right, security services now, Mr. Ingalls. Eric, where are you? Is he here? Where's Eric? Oh, hi, Eric. All right, so there have been some hot discussions regarding University High School. I asked Eric to step in here. We did report an incident out last month. I could not give all the details because I'm not the expert in that. I know that it does fall under facilities. But I did ask Eric to speak on that, and there have been 2 major incidences in which Eric will report on.
6
Eric?
incidents.
2.
6.
Well, I know 2 major.
Read your emails.
So, we'll start with the gun, the update of the gun within the school. So there's no additional information from the Newark Police Department relative to their investigation. It's moving through with prosecution. All the staff, the team members up there, the Office of Safety personnel, and some administrators were trained relative to comprehensive bag checks. There were some staffing adjustments, and those staffing adjustments are continuing with the addition of personnel after conversations with the principal at the school. Took steps to address the flow of the students within the building. Certain time periods, the students were permitted to go out into the lot, which is a wide open lot. It's not necessarily the most secure lot. So the administrator agreed that it's probably best to keep the students inside until we can be certain that that's not going to be or pose a problem or a potential problem in the future. Working with facilities to clear the grounds to ensure that all the grass is clipped and there's no obstructions where that would lend itself an opportunity for anything to be hidden on the school grounds. Part of it is that our security guards in the morning are doing perimeter checks to ensure the exterior is clear from any possible hazards, which are including guns or any other contraband that may be hidden or thrown throughout the night in the perimeter of the school. That's spread out to the other high schools and all the other schools as well, but particularly close attention to University High School due to the geographical location of the building and the issues that are happening in the neighborhood recently. All the equipment, all the metal detectors are operational. We transitioned some metal detectors over to another entrance that's utilized during sporting events and during off hours. That's pretty much the update of working with facilities relative to the structural improvements as well as the groundskeeping. So some of the windows, we're reinforcing the grates around some of the windows, whereas some of them could have been pushed in. Now we're in the process of securing those, identifying those, and ensuring that those are all addressed. That's it with the gun. Most recent incident relative to University was on Friday. A student was attempting to gain entrance into the volleyball game, and metal detector triggered what we thought was a gun initially. It was a metal object in a form of a gun. If you saw it, you would think if it was a gun. If you press a lever, a knife blade would come out 4 to 5 inches long. So that student is a student of University High School. Principal is aware, dealing with it administratively. It doesn't rise to the level of a crime, so there's no need to notify law enforcement. It wasn't used for any other purpose, and it wasn't actually a gun. So that lends itself to the fact that the protocols are in place at the school to better check and screen personnel coming in, or anybody coming into the building for that matter. Some of the other issues, if you don't mind, just discussing, there was a felony vehicle pursuit by the Newark Police Department. Vehicle crashed in the area, and some individuals fled from that vehicle. Out of precaution, we put the building into lockdown for a short period of time.
Right.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Eric.
Yes, that's the adjusted.
Okay.
The adjusted.
And to
Thanks.
follow up on that, Eric will bring a comparison with current incidences moving forward in response to Board Member Bledsoe's inquiry about incidences that happened in the past years versus the present. September 29th biting incident at Barringer was reviewed and discussed. And this is a concern that I have, which I spoke in depth with Mr. Ingold and Mr. Robert Gregory. Anytime an incident happens at a school and I get a phone call, I immediately call Eric. And I get Robert involved, Mr. Gregory involved, because he is the assistant superintendent of all the high schools. So the moment that the university incident happened, that it was first reported by Ms. Dashay Carter, where she called me immediately, I immediately called Eric. Eric says he was already on it. This biting incident at Barringer had to do with a parent calling me up. You know, they claimed that the kids were play fighting, and next thing you know, the kid had like 10 marks all over him, bitten up all over the place. So I asked Eric to intervene. I asked Mr. Robert to look into the situation, in which they did. They resolved it with the parent and the principal. But my biggest concern, why wasn't it reported? It took 2 weeks for it to be reported. And I think something of that magnitude, no matter what the incident is, it should be reported to the district, because sometimes they try to downplay things, with certain things are more serious, you know, than others. But I will say that Eric and Mr. Ingold and Mr. Robert Gregory have been extremely helpful and diligent in expediting these requests. And anything that I've gotten and they've handled has been expedited very, very quickly. Thank you for that. All right, moving forward. Board Member Gatta reported that a special officer at Weequahic High School game ended because additional support they needed to cover the concessions as well as the ticket booth independently. Mr. Ingold reported that Newark Police was on duty, and they were also on call for the Shabazz Central football game, and they were also set up with minimum staffing. Board Member Gaddy requested a copy of the staffing schedule for the games from Mr. Ingold. Board Member Gaddy again requested a staff security officer at Arts High School to ensure that ample security for the Arts High School students, asked with recommendations for Mr. Ingold would give. Per Mr. Ingold, Arts High School will have a budget for another security officer. In the meantime, Mr. Ingold will do his best to cover that location with a per diem. Ms. Gaddy also informed the principal the need for an officer in the budget. All right, here, let's see. Facilities management. Mr. Ingold reported the fourth floor will be completed within 2 weeks of Thanksgiving. The university gymnasium floor, they're still getting quotes because evidently they don't know where this water is seeping down from the side of the ceiling, from the side of the, no? Oh, sorry. Paul. All right. Eagle, I'm sorry, Mr. Eagle. So they have to determine where this leak is coming from, because evidently, if you haven't gone to university, this is a beautiful gym floor. Beautiful gym. It's immaculate. But there seems to be water seeping up from the bottom, and the wood warps. And being that they play volleyball, and you know university has one of the top girls and boys basketball teams in the state, they have a really, really beautiful gym floor. They do. Okay? Let's see here. Oh, Ms. Gaddy also had concerns regarding the high temperatures at Arts High School with the lack of proper ventilation. The Crystal Project update. All 46 schools that were offline last year because of lead in the water, all 46 schools are back up now. New filters have been put in, new fixtures have been put in, new faucets, new clamps. I believe the number's it exceeded a little over 1.3 million. That number's pretty accurate. And I think the only glitch that they have now. When they turned those units back on, some of them were clogged because while they were cleaning them, shutting them down, and they put new fixtures in. Once the water started running, whatever was sitting there kind of clogged it up, but that's being taken care of. All right, let's see here. There were no resolutions to be added. Board member Gaddy asked for Mr. Keith Veltray to be at our next operations meeting on account of this fundraising that's going on. And it's not being reported to the district, so this is something that Board Member Gaddy is very adamant about, and I agree with her, that he should be at one of these meetings to explain himself. We're gonna discuss a long-range facilities plan on all the buildings per the request of Mr. Bledsoe. I'm gonna meet with facilities on, actually tomorrow, to start getting that ready, so I'll have some sort of report as to where we're gonna start, what we're gonna do first, and where we kinda wanna finish after 5 years. Okay, it's not gonna be something very quick. All right, and then a board member requested the list of current district-owned properties. Any questions? Meeting was adjourned at 7:56.
Yes, question.
Ms. Owens?
Thank you. So for the first agenda item, the tracking system for
Yep.
the buses, just
Yep.
a clarification on one of the points. I don't know if it's just a discussion or this is what's moving forward, but on page 2, the third bullet down, walk-through scanners prevent the need for a physical card to be handy.
Well, basically,
What we scanning
these
children's
buses-
bodies? What's
No,
going on
these
here?
buses will be equipped with a
What's that?
scanner. The buses will be equipped with a scanner there. It's sort of like when you go through an Easy Pass. There's a
Okay.
scanner there. The card can be in their wallet, it can be in their book bag, it could be in their pocket.
Oh, okay.
Provided they have that card on them, you get a click
Oh, okay.
that they're on the bus.
All right, just want to make sure we're putting barcodes
When they leave.
or anything like that. I'm
No,
sure.
no, we don't zip them. No, no, no.
Just
We
wanna be
don't
sure.
hang down. No, no, no. nothing
Okay,
like that.
thank
Nothing
you.
like- No, no, nothing like that. Nothing like that.
I have one addition to Chair Padalia's report. Today, we began repairs on the university gym floor. We have yet to determine the source of the water. It does not appear to be coming from the roof, as it did not make it wet this past weekend when we had significant rain. We had somebody go in and check it on Monday. And we can't find a source. What we believe it may be is it could have potentially been a roof drain that was clogged, leaked under the floor, and led to that particular spot where it pooled. But we are repairing the floor in full, and it should be up, I think, tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. It's not going to be out of commission, and we'll see if it leaks again, and then we'll try to find the source. Because everywhere else we've tested, we can't find it.
Any, Ms. Johnson?
Yeah.
And then Mr. Bledsoe?
Good evening, everybody. So I had two questions. I just wanted to piggyback off of from last meeting what Kim had stated. I was at a 2 weekway games now. My son is on a band, and so I had the charge of being responsible at the last weekway game at the concession stand. And there was only one Newark police officer at the entire game. And I thought that was just like crazy because there was so many spectators at this particular game. And not only me working at that concession stand, I was verbally assaulted by a couple of kids standing at the back gate, and then when I came from behind the concession stand, no respect at all. And the police officer who was there, I was at the concession stand, and she was all the way at the front gate. So she can't be at 5 different places at one different time. So you can't have, there's only so much that our security guards can do in a certain situation. And at that back gate, when they were leaving after the game was over, the security guard that was there in place, she was trying to direct people not to go out that back gate, and they were totally, ignoring her request. And there was only one security guard at that back gate as well. So when I had asked the question, because that was the second time, and the special police officer, the lady, she was there by herself, she had made a request also to the mayor when we was at the Three Doctors event, and she had let it be known to him that she was uncomfortable being at those games by herself. So that week of that game, and then the following week thereafter, she was still there by herself. And that's just like, to me, it's just intolerable. And there was an incident that happened outside of the game at Weekway where she had to call Newark Police Department for backup to come. So me as a parent and also as a board member, I was very uncomfortable and I felt very unsafe at those two particular games. So I just wanted to put that on the record that that's an issue that needs to be addressed like immediately.
Ms. John, I just want you, for the record, that was brought up at our committee meeting. I did bring that up. I was told that I wasn't telling the truth, but that was brought up at the committee meeting.
I had a conversation with the mayor myself at the Three Doctors event, and he put it on us. He said it was an NPS issue.
It is.
And
It is.
so he said that, you know, we had to deal with that in-house. So I just wanted that to be known and put on the record again,
Well,
because it was crazy.
Board Member Johnson?
Yes.
I'll make sure, because I'm going to meet with operations tomorrow, that be one of the first topics that we discuss regarding that. I'll give you that.
That's just a real bad safety issue. And also another concern of mine is just looking at this monthly incident report. Maybe it's just me and I'm confused a little bit. So I'm just trying to figure out what's the difference between a medical clearance and a medical referral. Because I see one instance where a student had some empty weed bags and they got a medical clearance. And then it was another incident. I'm just asking, just for my understand that we could talk about it offline. But, you know, that was just the issue that I had myself.
Mr. Bledsoe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just really quickly, I just wanted to provide the entire board. I did speak to Business Administrator Valerie Wilson about my request to discuss the long-range facility plan. From my understanding, Ms. Wilson has advised me that that plan has been updated, and she will be forwarding an updated copy to the rest of the board. Secondly, we talked about the assignment of security officers at events. And I recall us having a conversation at the Operations Committee meeting last summer about the participants versus the number of officers to be assigned. Now, if we're having this conversation again tonight, that there was not enough personnel or just staff for an event of that magnitude, we have a serious problem again. And I request that we discuss that again at the next Operations
I
Committee
just want to
meeting.
interject. We had enough security guards. We don't have enough police officers.
What I'm
Right,
saying is
so-
that I would like to discuss that
Right.
at the next Operations Committee meeting, security and that other option.
So I just wanted to clarify that. And so one of the things that Tave didn't mention, just in terms of, in this report where we spoke about Arts High, there was also, I brought up the concerns that where we have our blinking crossing, we have trucks that park on the sidewalks that block the sign. They're still flying by. The Newark police officers are parking down by St. Benedict's or by Wiggum's Funeral Home. They're not getting out of their car unless I go over to them. And I think that I told the officer that we needed to start giving tickets to those individuals. Because this is the only way that we're gonna stop them, and so they would adhere to the proper protocol that's in place. And that hasn't happened. They just sit in their car. They don't kind of help with the traffic. I got out and crossed kids. Parents was thanking me for 30 minutes while the police officers sat in their car. So I just think that we need to address that.
Around what time frame is that, Ms.?
Oh, it's from 2:30 to 3:30.
Oh, okay, so maybe, okay.
I'm there every day, so any day you wanna come.
Maybe we could send instead of just sending something to the police department, maybe we could also send something to Newark Parking Authority, who also have their cars who float around the city, so that they go and make that a route. The ticket cars that's parked improper as well.
Yep, thank you.
Just really quickly, I would like an update on the incident at Eastside High School. I know it said that it's pending
We got
an investigation. so
the superintendent's gonna give.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anybody? So also, with addition to what Ms. Johnson and Mr. Bledsoe was talking about athletics in our games and police officers. If we could share the athletic schedule with the captains of the police department, I think that also could help us, because that was something that was discussed as well. The police captains said they don't know when the games are, so how can they deploy people when they don't know? Yeah,
Being there, it was
That's
an
right.
issue of them not knowing when to be there.
that's right.
Just want to make that clear, put
Yep.
that on the record.
That's right. So if we can share that schedule with the police
I'm
department.
confused.
All
So
the captains.
we talked about security, but what is the other request that's being asked? Is it school safety officers?
It's police officers. as
Police
well.
officers.
Police officers.
We have enough.
But, so I'm confused because I'm hearing that the mayor is saying that it's a Newark Public Schools issue.
It is.
So,
It is because we're
So who's
obligated
dropping
to
the ball?
Because it's our responsibility to keep our spectators and students safe. So if the police department don't know that we have activity going on, how can they, respond?
Hold on a minute, Ms. Val.
So it's not a
If I
matter
may
of the police officers. We
Hold
as
on.
as a board have the obligation to give them the schedule so they can have the proper police officers at the event. That's the gist of it, Reggie. So we have our security guards as NPS that are there required, but then we have to ourselves give the police department the schedule.
And I got
Mr.
that.
Chair,
I got that.
If I may interject a minute. Good evening, everyone. Flo, Kim, I'm not sure how it gets funneled down through the district, but I'm sure if an email is sent out with the schedule of the games to the police director and the public safety director, they may or may not grant that request due to the police coverage that they need within the city. So what I wanted to know from Ms. Val is that the district's or Newark Police Department's responsibility?
We have,
Hold on.
Mr. Ingold just walked
Okay.
back in the room, but I think this is a topic we need to discuss at the Operations Committee
Committee, yeah.
and get clarity, and then we can present to everybody. In terms of, because I don't have full clarity on it, so I'm not going to speak on it unless I do.
So,
So,
why aren't we doing it?
you want to take it?
What was
Take
done
it.
last year, Mr. Engel?
So the question is relative to the police coverage at the games?
Newark Police Department coverage.
Well-
Board member,
So the officers that we have working for the district are Newark special police officers assigned to the game, paid for through the district to work the events. The exterior is covered by the Newark Police Department from the precinct officers. So it's through coordination with the commanders in the precinct where the games are being played, where they provide the coverage for the exterior. It doesn't make a difference. I mean, sometimes they will come into the games, but primarily they are assigned to the perimeter of the games.
The question came up that, the question came up that, do the captains in the precinct have the athletic schedule?
Yes, they do.
I thought so.
It was sent up to the director's office as well as the precinct commanders.
And just for clarity, while you're here, we was talking about the Weequay game and Shabazz. So we had the one officer that was at Weequay, and because the Newark Police said they was on the outside of Chancellor, that was the coverage. But as I mentioned to you in the committee meeting, when she's over in the front booth
Right,
to
she
making
can't-
sure the money is being collected
Correct.
and those folks are safe, then what happens in the concession stand, nobody is there.
Right.
And so that was the whole problem as to the lack of, us having more than one
Sure, and they're- and they're
armed police officer.
Correct, in there. And then at the same time, there was a game at Shabazz where there were officers covering from the Newark Police Department as well, and we had 2 officers assigned to the Shabazz. So there was an incident, that was an evening where we had both games, but I recognize the concern for the additional officer at Week Wake.
So, Mr. Engel, do we touch base prior to games, with the police department, just as a friendly reminder, Barringer will be playing at School Stadium this evening?
Yeah, the safety officers that we have working with us, the specials that we have working with the games, as part of their protocol with the Newark Police Department is through their radios, they have to call in what's called the police action. So essentially, they're coming on the radio, letting the dispatcher know where it is that they're being assigned. So it's known by the dispatch, it's known by the precinct commanders ahead of time, so they can assign the police officers. And the safety officers, the specials, do communicate with the police officers in that precinct as well.
Excuse me.
Ms. Carter?
If I may, it sounds like we're a bit confused or we're talking about different things. It sounds like to me that we want to make sure we have more special police officers inside, not necessarily Newark Police Department, which is on the outside. So if I understand correctly, the request from the board should be, what can we do to make sure we have more than one special police officer in the game? Because you just said that the Newark Police Department is for the perimeter. So that's not the issue. The issue is inside the game, from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong because I wasn't there, that inside the game, there was only one special police officer and we need more. So what can we do to assure that we have more special police officers at the game?
Well, as I said in speaking with Ms. Gaddy, and to Ms. Gaddy's point, that we would identify that and add a safety officer to that to cover. I mean, the main concern wasn't necessarily a safety issue due to the crowd or the size of the crowd, but it had to do with the ability of a safety officer to cover more than one location in the stadium. So based on recognizing that, I mean, we could certainly address that issue with an additional safety officer. You're welcome.
Can I get a motion to set the report?
Garcia, second by Bledsoe. Motion to accept the October 2nd Operations Committee report delivered by Vice Chair Padilla, moved by Ms. Garcia, second by Board Member Bledsoe. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstained? Motion carries. Operations Committee report accepted.
Okay, Governance Committee did not meet this month. Just one additional report. Ms. Carter mentioned it in her report. There was a committee put together, that's being put together, it's a working committee put together for our transitional plan. We are organizing community meetings throughout the city, in each ward of the city, which will be at one night, 5 different wards. As far as the wards, board members that will represent each ward, the board members that are assigned to those wards. So that means the North Ward will be Ms. Padilla, Ms. Garcia, East Ward, Ms. Fonseca, and Mr. Lewis. South Ward, Ms. Carter, Ms. Gaddy. The West Ward, Ms. Owens and Ms. Johnson. The Central Ward, Mr. Bledsoe and Mr. Lewis. The Transition Planning Committee right now consists.
So the dates are being.
It is still being finalized. The Transition Committee Planning Committee is still being finalized for our membership. The superintendent's gonna go more deeper into it during his report, but I just wanted to update the board that our first meeting was last week. We will be meeting again this week, and as we get our things together, I will be spreading it out to the rest of the board to look over, so that they'll be updated on what's going on with this committee.
So
Mr.
just
Chair.
for clarification.
Mr. Chair.
Did you mean the transparency?
No.
Transition Planning Committee.
Mr. Chair.
With local control meetings.
You said we. May you let us know who the we are that you're meeting with that's discussing this? Because this is, it was my first time hearing it at the community engagement, but I think as a board, this is our first time as a whole hearing about the we, so maybe we know who the we is.
The committee, like I said, the committee's still put together. The superintendent asked for myself and Mr. Padilla as the chair and the vice chair. Paul sits on there. Ms. Antoinette Bassel Richardson. and Rob from the trust.
Okay, thank you. And then my second comment on that, and this is just my personal opinion. I understand the by the ward thing, and I think I said this in my committee meeting. It was said that you all decided to have one meeting across the city. So something that came up, I think it was myself, I don't know if the rest of my committee people shared that, but it's hard for the mayor and the superintendent to be in more than one spot on that night. Secondly, I'm a board member of the entire city, not a specific ward, so I'm interested in hearing what other people have to say in the other wards, as well as I think that by making it one day and we still haven't solidified the date, we're telling the public if you can't make it on this date, then you have no other chance to put in input versus doing it on different days. And we still don't have a date. We still don't have a committee. We still don't know what this is going to be. So it sounds like it's going to be last minute, and we're making this to where we won't get community input. We're just saying, again, we put it out there. We made a meeting. You couldn't make that one meeting. Oh, well, we tried.
So maybe I can lend some clarification to this. The meetings are co-sponsored by the mayor's office, the district, and the Newark Trust. Preliminarily, right, the recommendation that came from a meeting of those representatives was to proceed on a date that has not yet been determined, but preliminarily is November 1st, but please don't, we'll have a firm date down the road. That is something that is not entirely our decision, but comes from the input of others. I will be happy to pass on your thoughts about you would rather have it not be on one particular day, but as I said, I think this announcement may have been slightly preliminary because there's still things being sort of worked through.
So my question is, should we not be the lead? This is local control for Newark Public Schools, so shouldn't Newark Public Schools be the lead and your board members be included in this conversation, in this process?
Are you talking about the community meeting, or are you talking about something else?
I'm talking about the community meeting that's related to the transition plan.
Right,
So we
as
should be
opposed
taking
to a
the lead
transition
with
committee.
partnerships from the mayor's office and the trust.
I'm happy to have you engage with the mayor's office on this. I'm frankly following direction that came from there, but why don't we consider this situation fluid and subject to your input, and I would encourage you to
Lastly,
engage.
can we include the board members so that we can be a part of the decision-making as we are the elected board?
Which decision-making?
The meeting, anything that we talking about this committee, he's saying he's met several times. We want to be,
I said, we met for the first time last week.
okay, so the first time didn't include us and we didn't know about it. So can we be included in that?
So again, I think the announcement was a little premature. To the best of my knowledge, the full composition of that has not yet been resolved. So there was a preliminary planning meeting about how is this process going to work. Remember the personnel committee, there was representatives of the board, not the entire board. This is the equivalent process, right? So there will be representatives of the board, but it certainly cannot be, there are going to be.
No, I agree, but we brought it back to the board to let them know what was going on. We
Sure.
didn't make decisions on behalf of the entire board. So yes, we were
I understand.
representatives there,
I
but
think
we
that-
let the whole board know what was going on.
I think that is, from my point of view, I'm not
Thank you.
running this board. I think that's entirely appropriate, but again, we may have gotten ahead of our skis a little bit on what this process is.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Mr. Chair.
yeah.
Yes, so I definitely appreciate Board Member Carter's questions. I share the same sentiments. I definitely don't appreciate just hearing about this tonight. I know you did make mention of, when I was asking questions about what happened with the Transparency Committee, which I still haven't received all the answers to all of my questions about what happened. Or if there's not information for one of the questions, and I would appreciate you say that that document doesn't exist. If there's no minutes because there were no meetings, or there's no minutes because no minutes were taken, then I appreciate if you actually respond and say that. So second, Board Member Carter's concerns, and then this is just in general, not even just for the report that you just gave, but for everyone, I think it's just more professional if we could actually use first and last names of individuals. So when you were saying who was at this meeting, you said Paul, and it sounded like you said Rob. I don't know who those people are. There's a lot of people named Paul. So if you could please clarify who was actually, list all the people that were actually at this meeting last week. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair,
Ms. Gotti.
and I just wanted to make a recommendation. I mean, I just think that it should probably be 4 members of the board on this committee as well, because then you could have 2 that rotate, just so that it's not a quorum, just so that we can have the strongest voice at the table. Otherwise, the board members are outnumbered by these other individuals who you're saying is on this committee, which I think is not the way that we should be moving forward. I think that the priority should come from this board, because we are the ones who are going to be making these decisions. And so I would hope that you would consider that at least 4 board members can serve on this committee.
So actually, to be entirely clear, the process that we've talked about before is that the state is going to ask for the views of the board, but to be very, very clear, so there's no confusion about this, the decisions, this is not something the board will vote on as a full body. It is something that it will collaborate in the development of. I just want to make sure there's not a lack of precision on that point.
Exactly, but I'm saying that we can have the most input, right? It didn't say that we can have 4 board members on that committee, correct?
It is subject to design along a number of different,
But we can ask, right?
Absolutely.
We can ask, so that's why I'm putting the recommendation.
So again, to the best of my knowledge, the only thing, I meet once a month with the chair and the vice chair, sort of talking about what the agenda is going to be and that sort of thing. The subject of how is this transition committee going to be work? What's the community involvement? What is that was a passing subject in a longer meeting. I then had another conversation, and I suppose I shouldn't say this, with the mayor and the mayor's office. What do you think about this? So as I said, I don't think we're ready to definitively describe a process that is still a little bit in transition, but I do appreciate the input that's come out of this meeting.
And if I may, to Leah's question about the Transparency Committee, and somebody can correct me, the last I heard about the Transparency Committee is that we were going to do away with it, and that we were going to use our other committees because the Transparency Committee wasn't up and going and didn't have the proper people. But if something has changed, someone can feel free to chime in on that.
So I'll clarify that. The Transparency Committee was something I inherited. I didn't create it. It was something I inherited. The process we tried to find people to be a part of that committee, it did not work. We interviewed people. We all felt as though those people was not qualified to sit on the committee. So at this point, I decided as the chair to go away with it and allow our committees, our working committees, to be a part of the process.
So, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
2 things real quick. One, just, or maybe not clarity, but just another perspective. So it wasn't, the Transparency Committee was not, in my opinion, something you inherited. It was something that you and all of us other board members voted on in a resolution approximately a year ago to create. So I just, again, I've spoken to you about this privately one-on-one. I can't, it makes me cringe to hear this excuse about how you inherited this transparency. You inherited being the board of this, the chair of this board. So therefore, since this was something that the board wanted, it was your responsibility to make sure it happened, whether you did it specifically yourself or you delegated to someone to do it. So I just have to put that on the record because I just can't keep hearing people say it was something I inherited. It's not, it's just some sort of excuse. And then second, again, I did ask a very straightforward question, which was, what are the names of the individuals that was at this meeting last week? And then after hearing Mr. Cerf, I just wanted to be clear, was this meeting about the transition committee or was this a meeting about something else and it just happened to be a topic? Because after hearing Mr. Cerf, I'm not clear on what the meeting was last week. Thank you.
So this meeting last week was to talk about doing the community meetings around local control. Far as this transition committee, like I said, people could agree or disagree. Or when this committee was formed, I was not the president of this board. So like I said, I inherited it, right?
Transparency.
Transparency, I'm sorry. Transparency, I'm sorry. transparency committee, and we tried to select people. It did not work, so I decided to go away with it. Now, at this point, I think that we need to move forward, and how we move forward is we have to focus on two things. First, we have to focus on the transition of this district. We have to focus on how the transition look. We also need to be getting ready to work on the superintendent search. So these are things that I feel as though that we have committees, capable committees on this board that can focus on these things.
And Paul and Rob?
Paul is Paul. I'm just sending you a text. The Paul is Paul Nadeau. I have no idea who Rob is. I wasn't. Was it Robert? Was it Mr. Gregory?
No.
No, I wasn't at the.
Ron.
Ron Chelweeson. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. I have a little trouble pronouncing that one. So, but this was solely about the right way to engage the community. It was a communications type meeting.
And Mr. Chair, not to belabor this point, but I would just think that something like this, if our next retreat, because I do think certain things could be done simultaneously, and I don't think that it should have been a call to just not move forward with a transparency committee without having at least a dialogue conversation with all the other board members. So I would hope that you would reconsider that and maybe put this on an agenda when we have the full retreat. That would just be a recommendation, so we don't keep, belaboring the point.
Okay. Okay.
Now we'll have our superintendent report.
All right. Thank you. I'm glad I came. Thanks so much, everybody, members of the community, my team, board members. Thank you very much. The first thing I want to say, because I do know that we keep returning to this issue of the Transparency Committee. I don't want to go backwards. I want to go forward. I am very interested in a board-involved process that looks at the facts, figures, and policies embedded in the universal enrollment and make specific recommendations. Deputy Superintendent Gregory, I know, has some thoughts about what are some critical questions that I know required factual development and board input that will lead to a series of important decisions for the future. So without looking backwards into what was or wasn't, or how it got to where we are, I want you to know that I think that is a critical responsibility, and I want to support a process that does that. There's a lot of energy and opinions and so on. I would love to have a professional process by which we establish a clear point of view and make some very, very difficult policy decisions going forward. So I want to repeat on behalf of myself and my colleagues that we are very committed to that process and looking forward to it being launched. There are a couple of things I want to say just as introduction, and then I'll just tell you what at the full board meeting we will be covering in greater detail. First, one cannot pick up the newspaper these days without seeing more news about the tragedy left in the wake of the storms, specifically focusing on Puerto Rico. I just want to mention that we've been monitoring the situation very closely. You may have read releases that we have put out, but with over 35,000 people in Newark who identify as Puerto Rican or Puerto Rican descent, we anticipate that students and families from the island will choose to relocate, whether temporarily or permanently, to Newark, or at least to stay with family members as they're able to leave the island. We expect that many of those individuals will not be able to bring with them education records, and that some even may arrive without parents or guardians. So this past Monday, I want to advise the board, I think you know this, a memo was sent to all school principals and school staff providing guidance on enrolling and registering all students who are displaced. We are committed to enrolling every student as quickly as possible, no barriers of entry, keeping siblings and families together as much as possible, providing all the information and resources needed to families through the Family Support Center and the Homeless Liaison unit. To date, the board should know we have already had 5 students arrive in such circumstances. My understanding is that transportation out of the island is increasing in volume every day, and that while I have no ability to predict whether that trickle will become something larger, we want the community to know that we stand ready to meet the needs of those children and are prepared to do so. I should also say that the Newark Public Schools, under the tremendous leadership of Margarita Muniz, has organized a clothing drive to accept donations from parents and students. Every one of our 64 schools are involved, and that process, I'll give you an update on the next occasion. We are also participating in the fund drive that I understand I was unfortunately out of town this weekend, but has been a great success, and we are doing our best to make that a success as well. I do want to, well, he's not here, but Mr. Maybe I'll save that. Maybe I'll save that for a moment until he returns. But I did want to report back on the east side event. Why don't I do that, and and maybe fill him in when he comes back. As I think Mr. Ingold reported, hearings were held this past Wednesday for the 7 students involved in the incident. 6 of the 7 received additional disciplinary action and have restorative justice plans in place. Those plans will be carried out at the Restorative Center over the next week. The Hedrick Martin Institute, HMI, met with administrators this morning where long-term supports were discussed in an effort to shift culture and climate. 4 school assemblies have been scheduled in the coming weeks. I had the privilege of speaking personally to the mother of the student, and I guess I'll leave the particulars of that conversation confidential, but I will say that she is expressing great support for the efforts that the district has made to date, none of which mitigate the unfortunate occurrence that befell her child. HIV specialists are going to be trained on October 19th, also directly from the Hedrick Martin Institute, as part of pre-scheduled violence and special populations training planned for this year. And that professional development of the staff is already underway. I do want to express my gratitude to Board Member Bledsoe for his leadership on the board's resolution, which was passed, I believe, at the last meeting. That kind of declaration of values is a very important part of what this board does. And while all of us have nothing but regret about the incident, I do want to thank our team and Board Member Bledsoe and members of the board for their vigilance and support as we try to address this to make sure that this kind of event does not happen again. A couple other things quickly. The Red Bull Stadium, if anyone wants to see what that looks like, one of the first things that occurred during my tenure here was the opening of a field at the George Washington Carver School. Many of you have seen that. It's a beautiful thing. I'm working with the leadership of Red Bulls, which I think is an Austrian organization, and as well as their foundation, and they have expressed with enormous generosity a desire to replicate what happened at the Carver Field on multiple sites around the district, including Rafael Hernandez, as I think is the first of what we anticipate. Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Anticipate 5 to be. I also want to mention, because it's come up in a number of emails to me, that we stated as a goal this year to dramatically expand the robotics program in the city. That is for those of you who have not had a chance to participate in or see it, it's a very powerful thing. We're moving from 3 schools to, I believe it is 18 schools that will be underway this year, and we're expanding it from high schools to also middle and in some cases elementary schools to sort of grow people into the final program. First Robotics is a really classy organization. If you've never been to a robotics competition anywhere in the state or anywhere in the country, or frankly anywhere in the world, they're pretty impressive things. I also want to mention that I met with Ms. Ivory Williams about the expansion of what we called STEM Week. STEM Week was the event where we did drop everything and do science education for a week in June. You all approved funding for that. We're hoping to considerably expand that this year. I am, one of those things that doesn't seem to get much attention, but the work that's underway in the science world, a pilot program for elementary school science program, the implementation of the new iQuest middle school program are going very, very well. I do want to mention, with apologies to colleagues, okay. Is that a fire alarm? Okay, no one panic. It's all good. Stay. Secure. Just an alarm. What? I get that reaction.
Someone in this room who shall remain nameless, open the door.
Oh. Go ahead and name him. No, kidding. So everything's good. Okay. Oh, no problem. We need a little excitement just to liven things up. I do want to mention that I have literally been to every board meeting, every business meeting since I arrived here. This next week, I am out of town on board business, on district business, so I will not be in attendance next week. So I apologize in advance for my absence. I would rather be here. Let me put it that way. Now, let me just tell you quickly what we are going to talk about at the meeting in greater detail next week. There it is on the board, but I will make this as brief as possible. Next page, please. That's okay. As you know, we are in the process of moving out of this building into 765 Broad Street. We will give you an update on how that process is proceeding. It is a process of gargantuan magnitude, not least of which is a piece that is already in our rearview mirror, which is moving what has to be 20 years of stuff out of the basement and giving it away or sending it to appropriate schools or so on. We've also moved our data center to the new building. Well, I don't know this because I'm not a tech guy, but I will tell you that the process of moving the network hub, the backup system, which includes the systems that operate all of our websites and all of our email, including those for our schools and our nearly 6,000 employees. We've succeeded in moving that out of this building into the new district, into the new building, complete with appropriate refrigeration and air conditioning and so on. And that is now, the system is now operating out of that building. Ms. Wilson and Mr. Ballard, who I saw somewhere, there he is, hiding behind the column, are working hard on the build-out and also working on a staggered schedule for moving. What staggered means is that we'll be moving in departments rather than everybody on the same day. So a lot of details behind that, more details next week. I applaud the board's frequent reminder to get an update on the process of the implementation of the strategic plan. The plan was presented to the board and distributed to all schools and the public. But we have made significant progress on that plan, but you don't need to take us at our word. We have tried to report in at committees about the particular components relevant to that committee. But we need to do more than that because sometimes things that happen in committee don't make their way either into the public as a whole or to colleagues on the board. So this next meeting, We will be presenting a full one-year update on the strategic plan, the good, the bad, and the ugly, what we've accomplished, which is most of it, and where we have fallen short. We'll be reporting on that. As you can see from the numbers on the board, it will be a substantially positive report. And if you will flip to the next page, please, and do not bother to look at that if you're looking at the screen, but those of you who have a paper copy of this is just an example of the format of the report, identifying the strategy from the plan. Is it off track? Is it on track? Is it partway accomplished? And then some detail in the right-hand column. We will be doing that for all of the priorities and all the pieces of it. I'm sure we'll have a lively discussion, but that is our attempt to advise both the board as a whole, beyond that which the people have heard in their respective committees, and the community at large about the process of the plan. So with that, I'm going to hand it over, I guess, to, Dave, I was about to hand the...
Mr. Padilla, yeah, the next item on the agenda, board members, if you could just look for the agenda for next week's meeting.
Thank you. Sorry, Dave. Mr. Padilla.
Oh, is there a question, Mr. Bledsoe?
I know normally we say questions or comments about the superintendent's report, but I just would like to thank you, Mr. Superintendent, for that update. And I look forward to working with you and your staff to fully implement the resolution that this board passed. So thank you.
Thank you. Board members, do you have any questions for the agenda for next week? Anyone? Carter, no? No? Okay, next.
Motion.
Excuse me, we need a motion to to fix the agenda for next week.
Motion.
Garcia.
Second.
Padilla. This is a motion to set the agenda for next week, approve the agenda for next week. Moved by Ms. Garcia, second by Mr. Padilla. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstained? Okay, agenda is fixed for next week. Public participation is next. Good evening. This is the public participation portion of the meeting. Item 8.0, excuse me, as a reminder, all time limits for all speakers are enforced. There's no sharing or granting of speaking time to others. Speakers must be present when their name is called. Speakers are required to give their names and addresses. The public participation portion of the meeting, at this business meeting, 10 speakers on a first-come, first-served basis. Examples of unacceptable behavior that are not permitted include but are not limited to naming district employees and engaging in personal attacks, slurs, excessive loudness, calling out, yelling, generally disruptive behavior, attempting to disrupt the meetings, or inciting others to do so. Public participation of these meetings is intended to allow individual members of the public the opportunity to address the board and the administration on issues of public concern, not as a forum for two-way dialogue with the board members or district officials. The superintendent or designee or the chair may respond to questions either at the end of the session, or responses may be provided at a later time. The superintendent or chair may interrupt any speaker or terminate any speaking privilege if the comments are disruptive or obscene. An individual may be cautioned that a personally directed statement may be slanderous or defaming, and the individual may be liable for his or her statements. Attempts to hijack or filibuster proceedings, repeated interrupting or badgering the board chair or district officials, repetitive and truculent speech, or disregard of rules of decorum, excuse me, are not tolerated, excuse me, and may subject the individual or group to removal from the meeting. If necessary, the meeting may be adjourned.
First speaker, Mr. Eddie Green.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Green.
My name is Eddie Green, and reside at 185 Pomona Avenue in Newark, New Jersey. I've been a Newark resident for 44 years, educated in Newark, and I've allowed my children to be educated in Newark as well. I began my teaching and coaching career in Newark Public Schools in the late 90s. In my years of coaching here at NPS, I've not only maintained a winning tradition, but I've always maintained a team of excellence in track and field. As a teacher at NPS, I've maintained a reputation of being firm and compassionate for my students, which I serve. My years of coaching at NPS have been rewarded with over 16 state championships, 4 Essex County championships, 6 conference championships, and 1 high school national title, which I was honored by the board 2 years ago. This is the most of any track coach that's ever coached here in Newark Public School System. But what I'm most proud of my years of coaching here at Newark Public Schools is 90% of my track athletes have gone on to college, most of them on track scholarships. Last year, me and my wife had to fight to get a decision overturned in reference to my son competing in track and field over at Westside High School. After this, a year, at the end of the year, in which I received all effective evaluations, a written letter of recommendation from a building administrator about the excellent job in which I've done as a teacher, despite taking one of the worst teams in the city of Newark and making them the best team in Newark and one of the best teams in Essex County and the state of New Jersey. At the end of the school year, I was released from Westside due to budget cuts, but not from the school district. Despite being one of the strongest teachers in the building, I was offered teaching jobs in two different occasions. After each time offers were rescinded and principals would not meet me or return phone calls. I later found out that someone from the district had been telling people that I'm under investigation and that I'm suing the board and already hired a lawyer to do so. I believe all of this was retaliation because I fought with the district for my son to compete for Westside last year. Some of my questions is just why would any school district want to get rid of a teacher who is so invested in the mission of educating our young men and women within the school district? Why would any school district not do everything they can to keep a coach who has such a tradition of winning and a tradition of sending boys and girls to college? Why would a school principal, as well as a board employee who offered me a job, stop returning calls to avoid meeting me or anything in the process, in addition to want to be reinstated in a teacher position and reinstated as a track coach at Westside High School? I'm requesting that if there's any investigation of me, I immediately receive documentation of this so that I can properly answer any and all accusations against me.
Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker, Ms. Yolanda Green.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Yolanda Green. Pomona Avenue in Newark. I'm also the president of Arts High's PTSO here in Newark. Less than a year ago, I stood before this board requesting justice be given to my son to correct the district's uneven and misapplication of NJSIAA rules. It was my understanding that the situation was handled and closed, but unfortunately, my husband and I have been made aware that that situation has not been settled and laid to rest as we thought. To be honest, last year I was told about a rumor that my husband was under investigation, probably would be blackballed from the district because we stood up. However, because it is not my practice to chase down a rumor, I chose to let those words stand just as it was, a rumor. Yet now I believe those words are not just a rumor, but directives that have been handed out by high-level central office and or NPS board employees as retaliation for my husband and I speaking out and against the unfair treatment of our son. Since we're talking about investigation, if the malicious practices that I mentioned are only rumors, then I have a list of 10 questions that must also be investigated. 1, how could Eddie Green, a teacher who received positive teacher evaluations and a commendation from the school principal, be let go from the school because of budget cuts? 2, why did a high-level central office employee tell me to my face that my husband, Eddie Green, would be placed in an open phys ed position and a week later refused to answer any of my or my husband's phone calls or emails? 3, why was Eddie Green offered a job in an elementary school only to be told a couple of weeks later the job was no longer available? 4, why was Eddie Green offered a job at a high school and confirmed in front of another school employee only to be told a week later that we've decided to go in another direction? 5, why would Eddie Green be allowed to function as the head track and field coach at Westside throughout the entire summer of 2017, only to be told a week before school opened that he would not be able to coach unless he had a sub-certificate? 6, why when Eddie Green went to apply for the sub-certification through central office, he was told that the district was no longer accepting new applicants for sub-certification? 7, how could it be that at the end of the school year in 2016, our current district state superintendent and the board honored my husband and his team for their success, and now his coaching job has been taken away? 8, how is it possible that district employees, community members, and people who don't even work in the district have communicated to my husband that there is an investigation going on about him, but yet he has not received any official communication from the district that there is one? Now, 9, how can elected board members and central office staff be aware of these so-called rumors and take a stand to stay out of it and see how it plays out? 10, will this board, now that the district has local control, allow retaliatory, intimidation, and bullying tactics to be used against its employees and families who speak out about unethical practices that are going on throughout the district? So in summary, if the district aims to work together, students, parents, and community, then why would the NPS continue to pursue an adversarial relationship with the Green family when that is not what we want, nor is it in the best interest of the students of this district? Eddie Green should be reinstated as a head track and field coach at Westside High School and offered employment at his appropriate step and tenure. Thank you.
Next speaker, Derek Ward.
Good evening. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, board members. My name is Derek Ware. My address is 259 Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard. For my colleagues in the planning field, economics, and neighbors, I'm here representing the Historic James Street Neighborhood Association. I'm also the executive director of the Commons Community Development Corporation and Washington Park Conservancy. My purpose here tonight is to talk about what I consider a breach of intent between the Board of Education, the universities, and the community, a breach that is described in the Broad Street Station Plan. The Broad Street Station Plan was created in 2008. An organization of partners included the stakeholders of the Board of Education, the city, the council, and other members, including the various colleges. All of us came together to create what we considered a smart growth development plan, which now is law since 2008. A part of that plan was to include the NJIT Gateway Plan, a principal recipient of a University of Pennsylvania plan, which incorporated the universities assisting in creating a district school on steroids, as they say, in quotes. The trade-off, this was a trade-off for the universities encroaching into the neighborhood. So we actually have the Broad Street Redevelopment Plan now in law. The universities now have encroached onto the community, and now we see that our schools that were in our neighborhood have been sold. We've had 3 schools in the area: State Street School, Warren Street School, and Burnett Street School. We are hoping that the Burnett Street School can be saved. The other 2 have been sold off. And why this is important is because the universities had committed to working with the community to create a magnet school, to bring faculty and staff together so that we would not accelerate gentrification. So let me be clear here. As economists, we can see that if we just allow the universities just to bring in college students without schools, you're not going to have families. So let me just highlight one of the important elements of the Broad Street Station, that why I consider this an intent and a breach. The Newark Public School Long-Range Facility Plan of 2002, updated in 2005, recommended that Burnett Street School be combined with Warren Street School and relocated to a new site within a combined attendance zone of the 2 schools, roughly West Market to South Bergen and to 280. The combined school is articulated to serve 742 pre-kindergarten students up to 8th grade students, approximately 4 acres. So since then, we had worked with the facility manager, planner, Colin Frost, up until 2014. We were not able to find a location in the school area, the Broad Street Station area. So the question becomes, why would you sell our schools when we have not found a new location? Now, part of the Broad Street Redevelopment Plan indicates that these 2 schools would be closed subsequent to a new school being identified. So we're asking at this point in time, before the sale is final, that the Burnett Street School be held off from sale so that, 2, the important agreement between the neighborhood and the universities can be worked, where the universities contribute to helping create a school. So I ask, and one other important thing to remember, we're talking about a neighborhood that is currently ready to introduce about 37 new housing stock. So how come we would give away and sell 3 schools when we know that now we're going to actually have 3,700 new people coming in?
Thank you, sir. Can you provide your comments to Ms. Martha so we can respond back to you?
Okay, we do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Ronnie Kellum.
Good evening, board members. It's been a while since I've been up here. My first thing, before I get into my statement, I would like to take a moment of silence for Miss Belinda Jones, who's a security guard at my former elementary school, who passed away, whose service is being honored today. Thank you. My first issue is the McKinley headlights issue, which I had emailed board members this last year, last school year, July 1st of 2017. It was brought to my attention via social media from a letter that was on district headline from the school nurse that a case of headlights was in the school. A parent then put it on social media, which the rest of the parents in the school were not notified. Attending a school concert for my son, who's in pre-K 3 at the time, I approached the principal, and the principal was unaware of the paper submitted on social media, and that's how come I found out. My question to the district is, what process is it for the school level to the district level to get information out on headlights? I understand that you cannot, disclose of the individuals that, are subject, but it'll behoove them to notify the parents, because this case happened in September. She waited all the way until June, which time for us to get out for recess, to notify parents at a school concert, which I believe that was kind of unfair, seemingly that the case happened in September. I believe that if the case happened in September, we should have been notified either in September or in October of the case. I have a lot more to say, so y'all gonna have to hold on. Of the case, so we can properly take care of the situation, make sure all the kids are, duly noted, school nurse, different things like that. So my question to the budget, and I want to thank Board Member Bledsoe and Board Member Fonseca for responding to the email which I sent about it, because I believe that there was a ball that was dropped from the school level to the district level. My second thing is chronic absenteeism. I have 3 questions. I want to know, under the ESA Act, which money do the district have to support for counselors to help with absenteeism? I know under 4 years of Anderson's administration, we face a lot of budget cuts. We face a lot of people being removed from the district. We faced a lot of institutional programs that help with those institutions. And I want to know, can we get some money, or what money does the district have to implement those programs back? Ms. Wilson, this is for you. Me and you go back and forth on the same topic.
Thank you.
I understand, with all due respect, Mr. Chair, this is my last question. I do understand that food and nutrition do play into absenteeism, and I would like to know from food and nutrition, can we have a data from the last 4 years under Anderson's administration on how food and nutrition plays into chronic absenteeism, and if the board can provide the last 4 years data for chronic absenteeism for the district.
Ms. Wilson, we'll get that to you. Thank you. Next speaker, Kai Colder. On the left. Next speaker, Denise Crawford.
I didn't. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Denise Crawford, 102 Prince Street. It's been a lot said, as normally in here, so we have things that we need to take care of. But on a real thing, most of the things that was said is things that we as a family, as a community, that we need to work on and sort of make things right. But my most important thing is the bullying situation that's going on in the district. We should have really got on this right when we came back to school, because we knew that in this crazy world of the things that's going on, that bullying is a real situation. And we don't want our kids harmed. We don't want suicide, rates to keep going up. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in the city, and unfortunately, our kids that should be in school, they're not in school. I didn't say this, and maybe a lot of people don't know, my own son was held at gunpoint and robbed this year. And it's sad that our kids that are doing what they're supposed to be doing, that they can't even go to work and come home and, play a little ball or do whatever they need to do without this kind of stuff going on. But in saying that, I advocate for all children. So we have to find something to do with our children that are doing the wrong things, that we can embrace them and bring them back to where they should be. So we all have to work together and do something, about that. Also, I just want to say I'm doing a new thing. It's not a new thing, it's an old thing. I've been doing it for a while. I've been blessed to have tickets to the hockey games, and I want to say that the first game that the Devils won, that I was able to get 149 people to go to those games. And I have a partnership with the Devils. I do not sell tickets. What I offer is friendship, and what I offer is that when they give me the tickets, my only responsibility is to have a nice warm body in those seats. So if I give you a ticket, whoever it may be, if you cannot go, I ask you to make sure somebody use those tickets. And so I want to say that South Street, technology, science, George Washington Carver, and other community people went to those games, and many people here at the Board of Education. And I want to thank everybody, for that, because we need to be doing stuff that that's fun too. So we need to hold the village together. And all I want to say, let's work together. Whatever differences, let's everybody talk to each other and let's settle it, because we got work to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford.
What's the name?
Denise Cole.
Want me to help you up?
Nah, I know I'm old, but I could get up. Okay, tonight it was disturbing to hear about the coach, but it's indicative of what goes on with this board. Tonight, I just want the board to know that each of you have a this legal cease and desist notice, because Marquise chose to give me some notice saying that I was disturbing the last board meeting, but there was lots of people disturbing it, and he tends to keep wanting to single people out. So what the young lady and the young man got up here and described is indicative of this board right here and some of the members on it. So I would like you to take a look at that notice. The notice is a legal notice. I'm letting Marquise know, stop singling me out. You're gonna treat me like you treat everybody else, with the same respect everybody else. Now, I want to move on to George Washington Carver and that soccer foundation. We do have a soccer field that's not being used at all. So I don't know why we're not in that soccer foundation thing, because we need coaches over there. We've been asking for coaches over to George Washington Carver so that our children can participate in soccer. Also, the Westside Park has a free soccer league for ages 4 to 14 at Westside Park. The practice is on, all they ask you to do is get them there on Tuesday. We did ask Mr. Friedman to partner with us to try to bring a coach up there so that our children at George Washington Carver can participate in soccer, because we have the soccer field. It's just not being utilized. Also, I want to know the money that There also is pix11.com, Fuel My School. I entered George Washington Carver. And any school in Newark can enter. And I wish I shared it with some of the superintendents that was here. That is Fuel My School. It's pix11.com, Fuel My School. And if one of us win, we get $10,000. Now, I know I'm asking the board to go on and give a comment about George Washington Carver, because the more that go on, you can win it. It's for New York and New Jersey, and it can be any school. So I'm sharing it, so any school is pix11, pix11.com / fuel, like fuel you put in your tank, my school. If the school, all 64 schools or 67 schools, I don't know how many we have, because they say 67 one time, 64 I heard tonight, but all of the schools can participate in that. So I'm asking that we share that information, because it's for New York and New Jersey. It's $10,000, and I would like Ms. Val to tell me, like the Giants donated $10,000 to Central, $10,000 to Weekway. When people donate that money to the school, how is it infused in the budget, and who tracks it to make sure what the money was designated for, it is actually spent? How does that work? Because the $10,000 we want, if we do win it, we want it designated for the teacher's wish list for the classroom, for what they think they still need in the classroom for the children. So we need to know how that works, who tracks it, how is it infused into the school, into the budget, because that's not told, and it needs to be tracked, and the board should
Thank you, Ms.
be
Cole.
aware of that.
Next speaker, Thomas Luna.
Good evening. My name is Thomas Luna. I'm a teacher here. I work at Rise Academy, which is across from Westside High School. So when I found that out, my sympathies went to the family that was going through that. In stepping back, in terms of the discussion that I was hearing, for today's meeting, it's to use a word, it's indicative of what I had mentioned at our last school board meeting, which is like, we are talking about a number of different things all the times and being reactive to the things that are happening in our district. What I don't hear is, what are we doing to be proactive about our district and our kids? What are we prioritizing as a board, right? Mr. Sir presented his priorities in his report that he's going to share out and roll out for the district, and that's wonderful, but I'm wondering, as elected officials, what are our collective priorities moving forward for all of the kids here in Newark? Because I am still very confused what they are, especially based on the conversations that we have had here at this business meetings. And so I guess the recommendation here is, because I don't just want to bring the headache, is whatever those are, you're going to have a retreat, let's spill those out. Let's flesh those out, present them, not only to this body, not only to the community, but also put them online. Baltimore Public Schools, their school board has a great example of one. I have copies of it that I screenshotted, because the very first thing that you come across when you click on their link is, what are all their priorities, what are all their goals, and how are they getting there? It is the first thing you see. And I think that we, being now in local control status, need to elevate ourselves to what it is we're doing and being very, very open about that. On the issue of transparency, which I thought was pretty funny, my biggest takeaway is, like, we don't have to have a transparency committee if we're being transparent to begin with. And I think there's some very real easy wins there. The first is these committee reports, like, they should be available online all the time, very easily accessed, so that we can read them. I think that they should be online before you actually come here. That way we're not reading off of a script, but more so talking about. I think you had a really good example of what that could sound like. I also think that, like, those should be taped. People should be allowed to join. Baltimore does that as well. Nobody can talk. It's not like a public hearing thing, but they allow community members to be a part of that and have it as a consistent time and place every single month. And I think that it provides us a good exemplar of what is possible for all of us. So just take this into consideration. I look forward to the work that you're going to do and the work that we do on behalf of all our Newark kids, and thank you very much for your time.
Next speaker, Wilhelmina Holder.
Somehow I just feel good evening, first of all. Wilhelmina Holder, 152 Midland Place in Newark, New Jersey.
I said to Marquise in the hallway, somehow I still feel, okay, I may not be picking the cotton, but now I moved in the house and I can iron shirts and cook. So the analogy is it's not freedom unless I decide and feel I'm free. If I feel I'm on a modified plantation, I'm still on a plantation. And by saying that, I'm saying that we still don't have adequate data that drills down so that the community stakeholders and not just the elected officials or the board members, that we all can have a collaborative plan that we're going to get behind, because it's going to require that we all work together, not just the board, the president and the vice president or certain board members, not just the mayor and other elected officials. It's going to take all of us to surround this and collaborate and get a hold of this. I was just saying, who is Monique Feynman? I'd like to know too, because I'd like to ask the board to be very careful in asking for fiscal information. We do need an audit, I agree. It needs to be comprehensive, but the state needs to pay for it. The other issue is you need to know, what are the pending contracts? Who's getting hired and what roles are they playing? Who are these people? Whenever you have an outgoing thing in the corporate world, usually they load up with all their friends, they come in and they tie your hands, and then you can't move forward as a district. Now we got to close schools, we got to lay people off, we can't get the attendance counselors back, we can't get the nurses, the psychologists. So we really need to know, where are we going and how are we going to get there, as this young man said. But we need to have transparency. We need the information. All of us need the information, not just one part of the board. All parts of the board, all parts of the community, all parents, all grandmas, all children, high school children, middle school children, we all need to be involved in this conversation. I find it interesting because I looked at the attendance, I was involved with that, and I talked to Mr. Gregory about, we're in trouble in the high schools. In terms of attendance, we are in deep trouble. The kids are not coming to school, so one Newark enrollment does have to be revisited and eliminated, and it has to be community friendly. And I think we don't have to wait for the board to do that. Community, we can get together and try to find our own solution and present it to the board. And that's my recommendation, that we do that and we get very aggressive about it, because our children are not going to school at 14 and older, and actually middle school too. They're starting younger. And we haven't had the conversation with New Jersey Transit, even though I will say that Deputy Superintendent Gregory indicate that's going to happen now, and he's going to involve the community and other folks in that so that we can make sure our children are getting to school. And I will say this to the chair and to the others. I was at a Barringer game. And this was last year, and I brought this up to you then with Mr. Brown. And there were only 4 security guards at that game, and this was a statewide competition. I said, oh my God, let's pray nothing happens. They had 4 Barringer guards, which we knew, and then the Newark police was nowhere in sight. I was just at a game Saturday in Barringer, supporting Barringer over East Side, in Orange. Over Orange, the same thing, a fight broke out. Interesting enough, the Orange safety officers stayed within the perimeter. The Orange Police Department went down the street where the kids were. And of course, Lyndon Brown and I went the other way where the car was. But the point being that we really need to look at that safety issue, because it's real, and we need to get some per diems perhaps hired or whatever we need to do to make happen. But we need to know how much money we have, how much we're working with. And that requires a comprehensive audit, and it has to be done now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Holder. Ms. Holder, you wind it up so quick. You saw me about to cut you off. Ms. LaToya Jackson.
Good evening. I'm LaToya Jackson. I'm a Newark resident. I live 123 and a half A Jelliff Avenue. I was born and raised in Newark. I went to Miller Street School from kindergarten to 8th grade. I stand before you on behalf of my son. He's a special needs student. If I didn't know how to articulate myself and I didn't have any sense, I would not be able to help him. The Newark Public Schools Special Needs Department needs to be reevaluated. I'm wondering why they closed so many schools when my son is being bused out of district. When, like, if I didn't have a car and there was an emergency situation, I wouldn't even be able to get to him. I had to close my business to sit in school with him as a young child. It took them 2 years to properly evaluate him. Anything that I had to do it on my own. DIFAS was brought into my life. I had, like, my life being under a microscope when my child was not able to get the help that he needed to get. And I finally got a hold of it because I went through every resource that I possibly could before I throw my son on medicine. I used that as the last resort because I understood that he was getting older. He would have to go into the society, and I want him to be able to be a productive child. He is now 12 years old. I've been going through this problem with him since he was 6. He went to Avon Avenue School. He was molested by somebody we don't know because he was too young to be able to identify the person or say who it was. He was then forced into a chancellor annex and then into a YCS school in Jersey City where I was scrutinized as a parent because DIFUS was in my life. They basically communicated all of my child's business with this DIFUS worker when DIFUS had no control over my child's well-being. The DIFUS system wondered why they was in my life because it was no abuse or neglect. I had to hire a lawyer because they took me to school to force me to put my child on medicine through DIFUS. I'm very upset. I'm trying to keep my composure because he's a 7th grade student now. He goes to Mount Carmel Gill Academy. I do have the support system that I need for him now at that school, but I'm wondering why 12 schools was closed when they can make the teachers, if they are inadequate in Newark and can't service these teachers, why aren't they giving these teachers, you know, the education that they need to service our children in district? That's one thing. My other thing is, I know it's other like pre-K through 3. It's a lot of, I don't have a pre-K through 3, but I know it's Montessori programs that they introduce to these children. And I think that that should be implicated by the board. That's just a thought. I don't know. This is my first meeting, so I don't know how much say I have, but I also wondering why Westside don't have a football field. I'm a mother of 2 black little boys, and I know it's a lot like that area. I know the principals, they had a lights out something this summer. I went, and it's a very good program, but what are the little boys gonna do? The coaches is fighting, they don't have nowhere to play. So I have a lot of issues. I just don't stand here about my kids' issues, but all of these young children issues in the city of Newark. Thank you.
Ms. Johnson. That's the end of our speakers list. I wanted to, before I go, any board members? Okay.
Just really quickly. I just want to really quickly. I would like to thank Ms. Jackson for coming to this meeting. I know how courageous it is to come here and talk about your story. You're absolutely right. This board needs to understand why Westside High School does not have a football field. I don't understand that. Absolutely, you should have been given some type of support services in this district to deal with your special needs son. So if I don't know who you spoke to, that probably happened before I got here, but I think that it's important that you revisit the offices in which you seek services for. Lastly, I want Ms. Holder's point about Westside High School. I took a tour of that school as a board member along with the superintendent and deputy superintendent, and it has come a long way. There's always room for improvement, but I firsthand saw, sorry for the lack of better words, the progress that has happened at that particular school. But again, back to Ms. Jackson's point, we have to talk about why that football team is not given the particular facility services that they need. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, can I just I just want to make sure that we get your name and contact information, and if you wouldn't mind speaking to Mr. Carolyn is not, Ms. Granato's not here, right? Would you just do it to Mr. Haggerty, so we will get our head of special education in direct contact with you? And I just want to make sure that happens before we break tonight. Thank you.
Ms. Gotti?
Yeah, and I do want to thank all the speakers tonight. I don't know if the information that Derek Warre had copied, I just want to make sure we get access and, copies of that so we could address that properly in the respective committee. Operations would be where I would suggest. I also want to
ensure that the district responds to some of the concerns that the Green family brought up here this evening. I know we can't talk about the personnel concerns. I am on personnel, but I do think that those issues need to be addressed. I don't know how much can be discussed openly, but I just want to make sure that it was heard and that we're going to respond.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Carter.
As the chair of personnel, I took the questions, I gave them to Martha. We will talk about it in our personnel committee. We can't, I believe you're still an employee of the district? No? Okay, but we'll talk about it in our personnel meeting amongst us and share back with the board.
Yeah. Anyone else? So, Mr. Luna gave an excellent, excellent suggestion. I want us to look into. We already did first progress of making sure that all board members have the minutes before our business meeting so that we can review. So maybe we also need to look into what he said, putting our reports online, and maybe that can also, limit the amount of time that we spend during our business meeting to go over and reports if it's online. So maybe we could also look into that. I want to thank you for that suggestion as well. The superintendent already dealt with special education. I thank all the speakers that spoke here tonight. I thank you, Chair Carter, for personnel to look into the Green family comments here tonight. Thank you all for being here. Until next week, we gotta get a motion to adjourn.
Excuse me, no new business?
Hold on.
What's going on?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at it, it was on my screen, so I thought that's what we was doing. Oh, the new business.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to talk about, because I know my son brought home his park scores, and I just want to make sure that we're having the right kind of conversation with that information that is being disseminated to the parents, so they know how to evaluate that. And, you know, we should have some thorough conversations about it. I mean, I'm pleased with my son's progress, but, you know, I don't know how the other kids are doing. And then also, I attended a meeting today that the Victoria Foundation enlists. They're training residents up in the Upper Clinton Hill section, and under the education area, they had nearly half of the children in the South Ward miss 15 or more days of school. Graduation rates of Shabazz and Weekwood High Schools are 68.9 and 66.2%. Only 12% of third graders in the South Ward meet reading expectations compared to 22% citywide. And then it said there's a shortage of 865 high-quality childcare seats for children in the South Ward. So I wanted to make sure that this information was accurate. I can make a copy for you all. But then also a question came up, and because I was a board member, they asked me the data for students in charters that live in the South Ward. Because this is a specific project that Victoria Foundation is putting money in the Fairmont neighborhood and the Upper Clinton Hill. But I just want to make sure, as it relates to education, can we be provided the data for the students who attend the charters in the South Ward, what those numbers look like. And remember, we're only talking about the Upper Clinton Hill, so it's only like 5 schools. University is the only high school, right? And you have Hawthorne, I mean, you got Hawthorne, you got Avon, and then you have 2 other charter schools, Legacy or whatever Legacy is, and one other one. So it's not difficult to get access to that information, but we just want to make sure that the information that we're talking about is accurate. So I'll provide this to the necessary staff person so we can have some answers for the next meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Carter.
I just wanted the community to be aware, and I think there may be sheets on the table, I'm not sure, but the Parents as Partners Institute will be hosting their second session tomorrow from 6 to 8 at the Spencer Miller Community Center. And the Parents as Partners Institute helps parents focus on educational policy, homeschool connection linked to learning, developing a personal story, identifying aspects of high-quality education, park testing, assessment, and key conversations with elected officials and local leaders. So if you're available, this is the flyer. It's tomorrow, October the 11th from 6 to 8, 66 Muhammad Ali Avenue.
Any other board members?
Yep,
Ms.
myself, please.
Ms.
On
Garcia?
Saturday, October 14th, North 10th Street School will be having a Northward community to beautify their school playground, and design a mural in honor of 9/11. It's gonna be exciting and a memorable moment, so they're encouraging all families and community members who wanna stop by. They're requesting for the board members to stop by around 11 a.m. That's when their program will begin. If you guys wanna come out and support this great event. October 14th. What? Well, it's going on
That's a
Saturday.
mural? It's on the school?
That's what
Didn't
they
we not
said on the
stop?
school playground.
Wait.
On the school playground.
What school is
Excuse
it?
me, hold on. Sitting on operations here. I will be at that school tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Because we stopped
There
it
is
at
no
Carver.
such mural going up on any building unless the proper paperwork is filed, and we haven't even drafted. We don't even have the final draft on the policy yet. So I will look into that. I will look into that tomorrow morning.
So you
first
may
thing.
also want to reach out to Councilman
Sure,
Animo
no problem.
Ramos, who's
No
the
problem.
sponsor of the event,
No problem.
okay?
Yep.
Or tonight when you leave the meeting.
No problem.
And advise us tomorrow so we
No
can all
problem.
attend Saturday.
No problem.
See you then.
Yep.
Any? Ms. Johnson?
So I just had a brief announcement. I have a friend of mine who actually is a barbershop owner in the Central Ward, and he had did a barbershop giveaway back to school drive thing at Brick Preston, Avon, and at Speedway Academy. So he wanted me to present to the board. This is something that he would like to do district-wide, and he wanted to know how we could partner with him to do so. Free haircuts. So,
Community
yeah.
engagements?
Okay, so that's my team. So, yeah, Dashe, we got to connect with that because he wanted to come tonight, but unfortunately he couldn't. But he wanted me to present it to you guys on record to let you guys know that he's willing to give out free haircuts district-wide.
Mr. President.
My brows.
Mr. Bledsoe?
Gotta go to West Side for that.
Just really quickly, I think we need to review the policy for in-kind donations because I think there is a process if a business or organization would like to donate services to NPS students. So I just want us to be clear understanding that policy. Secondly, I spoke briefly about this with legal, and I'll look further to continue the discussion with Chair Owens of the P&I Committee to discuss selective services for young men. And I briefly talked about some of the missed opportunities that young men in this community often miss through government jobs, through job training programs, CERT funds, because they have not registered for that program. So I think as a district, we need to take a look at this because a lot of missed opportunities are basically given up because of the not having the knowledge about that particular process. So thank you. And that's gonna go on to new business. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Carter?
Lastly, the events that are in the folder, I asked that Board Relations could put them on our calendar. There's a series of events that's in our folder that aren't currently on our calendar. If we can put those on our calendar so that we're reminded on our phones versus trying to keep up with the paper, please. Thank you.
I also see Tracy back there, so I wanted to make this clear. Can we have a letter go out to the city hall, to the clerk's office, that anything dealing with education in the city, that this board is made aware of it? It's only 9 people that's elected to represent education in this city, so we shouldn't have to find out about any information secondhandly. We should be the first ones to find out. So if we can send a memo out to all government agencies, City Hall, the county, anything dealing with Newark children in our schools, the Newark Board of Education need to know first.
Chair, this was an invite that we received. Okay? It didn't come out of City Hall.
No, I wasn't talking about that
okay.
one. I was talking about in general. All right. So, any and I did want to bring up West Side football, but y'all brought it up. We do need to talk about where's the football field for West Side. I was at the game on Saturday at Udman Field, and that's all we kept saying. Where's West Side football field? So we need to discuss that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
Good, Bledsoe, second Garcia. All in favor? Any opposed? Meeting adjourned. Good night. Bledsoe, Garcia.